Here we go.
G'day fans and welcome back to another exciting Wednesday night with Aaron and myself yapping on about, as we do, collectibles and collecting. It's very exciting. What can I say? It's getting cold outside. Why would you rather be outside? Come inside, sit down, grab a coffee or other beverage, come and join us and kick back for a couple of hours as we nerd on about nerdy stuff. So what do you reckon, Mr. Aaron?
Yeah, I feel the same. You know, I'm always complaining about how hot it is in here. Gee, it was cold today. Like the first day, I think since we've opened in a year and a half that I had the heater on in the shop.
Yeah, how's that, everybody? Aaron's turned into a bit of a wuss. He's now putting the heater on after, like, what's the deal? Mister, I'm from England. I can handle the cold. Don't you worry about me, old son. Unbelievable.
I must be wasting away.
Oh, goodness gracious me. Now, normally I start the show off with a few funny gags and quips and whatever, and I got nothing. I just thought about today. I'm as boring as batshit today. I mean, I worked at Aaron's store. I slaved away at Aaron's store on Saturday. As always, picked up boxes from the front of the store and shoved them out the back and cleaned everything up and straightened everything up. And then I get in today, and sure enough, there's boxes on the floor.
Just because you pick them up and put them out the back, and then I pick them out the back and put them out the front. It's like the way we keep each other busy.
Yeah, there you go. And you are right, Christy. Yes, we can see right through you very much. Exactly. When he's having a shower, he's got to run around just to get wet. Any exciting news to report this week, Mr. Aaron, regarding the store from your perspectives?
No, but do you know what I want to talk about? Well, they've all these Doctor Who announcements this week. That's all the exciting news. But I think that's maybe for a different show. It's not really collectible focused, is it?
Well, as Aaron and I discussed the other week, it's all gone completely right off the deep end in terms of the stuff. So Docky Who's having new out, Docky's popping up left, right, and center. Star Trek has had Strange New Worlds airing. Kenobi starts next week for Star Wars. Oh, it's just a complete like nerd fest of like big franchise material. It's absolutely fantastic. So, what do you reckon?
Yeah, it is a good time to be a nerd, and I love all the franchises. So I'll moan about them all, but I love them all.
Yeah, exactly right. And I agree with Rusky Babes. Yes, it's 2 hours of lively fun. Hey, it's Rip It Off the Car. That's actually a good name, actually, but it sounds like Hey's been stolen by another show. And here's me. Yes, very, very good stuff. And Greg's already happy. Yeah, Doc. Sorry, you spelled that wrong. It's supposed to be D-O-C-K-Y. Docky. So there you go. Good, fun stuff. Now, we've got a bit of a big show tonight, guys, so I hope you're not in a hurry for us to get through it all because, as you can see, we're still crapping on here. The Lost in Space thing we got this evening is a bit of a big one. So who would have thought that Lost in Space could be as large as it is? What do you reckon there, dude?
I just see that Russell's saying I'm Aaron Ostrich. That makes him Jackie McDonald, I think.
I love it. And good old Moneybag Sullivan. Yes, you cannot get through an episode without a Docky Who reference. Unfortunately, there's a curse we just have to live with. So there you go. What's this? I got some ads and okay, yeah, you got some Hey Saturday episodes that runs off. All right, so we're going to get into the swing of things. Carol is really excited for Lost in Space. Oh my god, it's just absolutely fantastic. Before we get into the news section, there's something I wanted to bring up. Now, I covered this off last week, and it's not really a big deal. But remember how in one of the toys that got released, you said there was the character from They Live, right? This dude. Yeah. And if you remember from last week, I mean, we said it's great that they're doing, I don't even know who this guy even is. The character from They Live, it's wonderful, it's fantastic. But I then said, it's a shame he wasn't in black and white, right? Remember that? Yep. So then I realized afterwards, I thought, well, hang on, what if I just put a black and white filter on the picture and just see how it looks? So I did that, and that's how they appear in the movie, and that's how it should be. So in my opinion, I mean, it's only a very, very small thing. But if they were to do the entire thing in black and white, it would have been a bit more convincing because in the movie they appear in black and white. So, yes, very good stuff. So there you go. Just a small thing there. And I'm just going to have to look around here for a second. Hang on. I just got it. There's an in-joke coming in here. Yeah, good on you. All right. So I had to send something to the vial. And he just responded. So, yes, it's very, very cool. Gavin's joined us. Good evening, fellow night owls. Yes, we are indeed at night owls, which is particularly groovy. Anything you want to comment on before we move on to our news, Mr.
Yeah. I'm just going to say, it's a shame that picture isn't in 3D, Dags.
Very, very good. Oh, shit. Speaking of 3D, good old Avatar. The trailer came out during the week as well. Oh, my God. End of the year. It's going to be completely going right off in the cinemas. What do you reckon?
It is incredible because there hasn't been a really big 3D release of note for a while. It was a fad for maybe 5 or 6 years, and then it went away. And do you know what came into the shop today? Absolutely worthless, but a collection of 3D cinema glasses. You know how they did themed ones like Lord of the Rings and Avengers? Well, a collection of those came in today.
I thought, because I popped into the store today, he said, "Oh, something came into the store that is absolutely worthless." And I think, is he talking about me? All right, now I just thought I just got this gag. This is one that's going to really piss off Moneybag Sullivan, right? Gavin said, "Good evening, fellow night owls," and Christy's just gone. I'm just thinking, Docky who. Unbelievable. And yes, Gavin's been waiting for Avatar. I think a lot of people have. And it's very funny. One of the comments that I saw in the YouTube thing about the Avatar sequel is the people saying, "Oh, what a shame. All these people who were looking forward to the sequels have passed away in the preceding 10 years or so." So there you go. But anyway, we're not here to talk about morbid stuff like that. We're here to talk about something very, very exciting. So I guess we should get into it. And of course, we've got to start with some classic. Color. Even that dude should be in black and white. What do you reckon, eh? So there you go. All right, Mr. Aaron, what are we talking? Oh, look at this. Moneybags has had enough of it already. I'm hearing you, Mr. Aaron. Well, it's not Mr. Moneybags. It's not me bringing it up. So,
well, Dan, you'll be really happy to know there's no Doctor Who in the news section. It's all toys and it's all very cool stuff. Now, what's happening is Lego's announced something very cool, and San Diego Comic-Con have started to release some of the exclusives that are going to be available there this year. So that's what we're looking at today.
Exactly right. Very, very cool. All right, we're going to kick it off. Aaron doesn't know what order this happens to be, but we'll start it off with this.
So this is a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive. It's Daniel LaRusso, and it's interesting because they're starting to do stuff filtering through from Cobra Kai rather than the Karate Kid, which kind of shows me that the balance has tipped the other way, where it used to be driven by nostalgia, but it's got popular enough in its own right to have figures released from the new Netflix series. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is actually. I'm surprised stuff like this hadn't come out previously. I think Cobra Kai is certainly one of those shows that has just been a mega hit that probably nobody expected it to be as popular as what it was. But yeah, it's done really well for itself.
Yep. So you've got Daniel LaRusso, and also you've got a nice Johnny Lawrence figure, which I think we had a bit of a preview of just a second ago, which is really cool because usually he sort of gets forgotten. But both these figures are coming out at the same time. Unfortunately, they're Comic-Con exclusive, which means there'll be $20 US Comic-Con for the weekend and then $200 online afterwards, which is always a bit of a shame with stuff like that.
Yeah, very, very cool. And the rest of the audience are all talking about starting a fan club, something to do with no Docky Who or something on them. Yeah, what does it say? Let's start a club anti-Docky. Anti-Docky Who. Oh,
yeah,
I can't see Aaron joining that club. So there you go. And Sullivan, he's gone right in for it. So there you go. Good stuff, guys. You'll have by the end of the show, they'll have all the details worked out, and they'll probably have their first venue booked, and we'll be popping along next week, which is particularly good. So the Cobra Kai thing, I think what clearly made the show very successful is they used the original actors for it. If they had to recast it for different actors, it just would have died a death. But using the original guys has been really, really groovy. So good stuff. Comic-Con exclusives, just what the world needs. And of course, you do wonder 10 years from now, is anybody getting a rat's ass about these things that haven't even come out yet? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, stuff from 10 years ago is still very desirable and sought over and usually gone up in value. So history would say yes.
Very good stuff. All right, on the same theme, but a completely different movie.
So again, this is a more unusual one because you do not see a lot of Bruce Lee stuff. I think this one's particularly nice. They've gone for the dragon, and they've done, it's the same series as the Cobra Kai stuff, and it's a Comic-Con exclusive. But you can see there he comes with extra hands, very a lot of articulation, very well detailed. So that's a bit of an unusual one that you don't see a lot. There've been some Bruce Lee figures and some statues, but not a lot of stuff comes out. When it does, it usually disappears pretty fast.
The problem with that figure is as soon as you take it out of the packet, it all just melts because, you must be like water, my friend. Oh, jeez. All right, very, very good. Now, so you're going to say something? Sorry to cut you off. No. All good. Now this next one, okay, I saw the Cobra Kai thing. I thought, yeah, that's all cool. Bruce Lee, you can leave that behind. But this one, I thought, oh, this is particularly groovy, not for the main character, but the secondary character, and of course, it's a bit of from the old original RoboCop EA team.
I know. So this is another one coming out. This is pretty disappointing that's a Comic-Con exclusive because it is Ed 209 and RoboCop. And you do get RoboCop occasionally, but you usually don't get that many Ed 209s. Now, this is a smaller scale figure, so it's not huge, but it's still a very cool figure to have. And like you said, Dags, getting the Ed 209 as the accessory is really the icing on the cake, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, I saw that and I thought, mate, give the old RoboCop the How's Your Father, because as you've said, there's been plenty of those floating around. You've even had them in the store. But the Ed 209, I thought that looks absolutely schmickarooty. So, yes, go Robo. Absolutely fantastic. So,
I'll
that
tell
is
you
very
what,
groovy, dude.
when you see these toys and when you see these figures, you can understand the bad guys in the movie, how you'd put your money on Ed 209 and not the little RoboCop, wouldn't you?
Well, Ed 209 wasn't a bad guy. He was just programmed to do what he was meant to do. I mean, so put down your weapon. You have 15 seconds to comply. It's just how he's programmed. So he wasn't a bad guy. He obviously didn't get the directives that RoboCop was given. But no, I love it. I think it's fantastic, and the box is very, very cool too.
Yeah, it is a really nice, unusual shaped box. It is one of those things that sort of makes it seem even a bit more precious because they've gone to the effort of making a unique box for it as well.
Yeah, regarding the Bruce Lee thing, hang on. As he said, not different hands. He's moving so fast that it looks like many hands. That's Chuck Norris, isn't it? There you go. Yes, dead Ed. I love it. Oh, Christy, fantastic. Straight out of Jessica Rabbit. I'm not bad. I'm just programmed that way. Very good stuff. Oh, that is excellent. But no, the Ed 209, I've got to say, I don't know. How big is it? 5.5 inches. I'm not very good with that's about that high or something.
Yeah, they're not huge figures. I guess the Ed 209 would be a good stomping around on your Star Wars figure collection type size.
And I've got to say, from a RoboCop perspective, that is a very, very cool piece. Yeah, just that looks awesome. So, well done indeed. So, good stuff. So, if you get to San Diego Comic-Con, I think there's a comment way from back here that Colin's been to good old San Diego Comic-Con 3 times, spent a shitload, as you do when you're over there, probably buying all these exclusives. Absolutely. Colin's already jumped on the gun. Ronnie, you have 10 seconds to comply. Yeah, we'll talk about Ronnie later on. We've got some really funny shit going on in Greg King's Cheaper Things. So if that's not working for you, the next thing you can do is get into a bit of Transformers action. Bit of Optimus. He's back.
Now, this was a release earlier in last week from Lego, actually. And what I find amazing about this, it is a large Lego piece, but when you look at it, you can't really even tell that it's Lego. Lego do this thing where they're very good at making replicas and figures, and they hide the actual brick studs under flats. So it looks like a transformer. And the most amazing thing, it transforms, not by pulling it apart and rebuilding it, but it actually transforms like a transformer. So Lego have finally got together with Hasbro, worked out all the marketing differences, and they've released a giant Optimus Prime in Lego form. What do you think of that one, Dags?
Yeah, it's pretty great. I actually didn't twig it was Lego. So, yeah, you're right. They've done well to hide it all. So, yeah, it's kind of cool stuff. Any Transformers fan would certainly enjoy making that. So, yeah.
Now, a year or two ago, Lego did a Voltron. So now you'll be able to build your giant Voltron and your giant Optimus Prime and fight them out in Lego form.
Mate, wouldn't that be good? Bits smashing off everywhere, and it's like, oh, they'd be all going up the vacuum cleaner, that's for sure. Or the cat would be taking bits and running off of them. So, absolutely fantastic. No, there's some good stuff there. And so, all of those, are they all San Diego Comic-Con things?
The Lego isn't. The Lego will be available everywhere. The other stuff is all San Diego Comic-Con. So, Lego at your local shops, all the other stuff at the local Scalpers eBay store soon.
Oh, you can talk about Aaron's Collectables, eh? God, Jesus. Thanks. I'm not getting a Christmas bonus this year. Sorry, what was that?
This show is meant to help my shop. I just dig a bigger and bigger hole every episode.
Mate, you left yourself open for that one. What can I say from all the scalpers everywhere? Well, it's very funny you should mention that because later on you're going to prove something that you bought cheap and you sold it for a lot. Everybody's going to wake up to you, son.
I actually thought you were going to bring up the paperbacks, but let's move on.
Yeah, exactly right. And you're right, William. It is Smash Up Derby. Absolutely fantastic. All right, so we've seen all the fantastic toys. It's absolutely awesome. San Diego Comic Con, absolutely awesome as well. So what could possibly bring the tone of the show down? It's got to be this.
Useless Pop of the Week!
Hey. What do we got there, Mr. Aaron?
Well, this week we've gone for one that's kind of related to Lost in Space in a roundabout way, and it's related to Lost in Space because it's the robot everyone thinks is from Lost in Space, but not. It's Robbie the Robot. And this is a useless pop because what have they done to his head? And the thing about this is the Lost in Space robot pop is a really good pop. I mean, for pop figures, it looks like the robot from Lost in Space, so they can do it right. I don't know why they decided with this one to make him look like he's put in a car compactor and has been like pushed down into a little ball. It looks like to me not Robbie the Robot, but one of those knockoffs of Robbie the Robot that someone saw Robbie and made one from memory kind of thing. But this is the official pop version of Robbie the Robot. What do you think of that? Is that the pop that's going to change your mind and let one into your house?
No, definitely not. Oh, what's the deal with the red things? Are they supposed to be eyes, are they? I mean, it doesn't need them. It's bloody
I
stupid.
don't know. They put those red eyes on the Queen thing as well, the Queen album cover. They just like to whack red things on to give them eyes. I don't know what they were thinking here.
William, don't mince words, son. What do you really think? Yeah, it's I don't know. Take the red eyes out, it would probably be okay, but yeah, it's not.
Do you see? Do you see the bonus pop you get with this one?
No.
Well, you get the Krell Phantom. It's in the background there.
Yeah, I mean, the id monster?
Yeah.
Hang on, back where? And where am I looking?
It's invisible. I was joking.
Oh! Excuse me, as my internal organs all spill out over the floor because your jokers are so good. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, yes. So this is our useless pop of the week. It's a Robbie the Robot that doesn't deserve to be in existence, in my opinion. They should have gone straight back to the drawing board.
Yeah, no, it's not them. Yeah, get rid of those red eyes. Yeah, that's the most important thing. So, unbelievable. Rusky Babes has said red eyes, Mothman, Robbie. Yeah, yes, indeed. Very good. Yes, or you could just, if you're not sure, take off the Forbidden Planet text there and just put in the, was it the Lost? No, it's not the Lost Boy. Invisible Boy. Yeah, that's it. Put that in there instead and see how you go. So very, very good. Useless joke of the week. Absolutely love it. All right, very, very good. All right, we're going to cover off a lot of territory here. This is absolutely fantastic. It's time for this. Hang on, press the right button. And we're off. All right, so the exciting thing is, kids, after last week, the arrival of some cards, something else has turned up. Isn't that right, Mr. Aaron?
I know. We have to thank Greg King. He puts in such a lot of work for this segment and often goes unrecognized. But this week he's really been working his ass off to bring us quality entertainment this week. Now, we have been waiting on these for quite a while. They are something we ordered right at the beginning of this year. They're light up dioramas from horror scenes. And they were, I think, $65 each, or you could get two and they were $49 each. So this is US. So they cost, for the both of them, well over 100 Australian. But they look pretty amazing. They're little dioramas from classic horror movies. We had about 8 different ones to choose from, and I chose the Alien because that's such a classic monster, and then the Halloween Michael Myers standing on his porch, which is a classic horror pose. So 2 very iconic pieces there. And it's taken nearly 3 months, but they've turned up.
Now, the interesting thing, when you look at the picture there, everybody, I mean, you can't judge the scale of how big it is, but it does look rather large, doesn't it? But the reality is completely different. But anyway, continue on.
Now, this was an interesting thing to order because on the website I ordered it from, there weren't a lot of photographs. So the ones that I had, I went back and I found the ones I'd used on the show, and there were only 2 of each. But I remember at the time there were kind of only 1 photograph of each item. And when I went back to look at the website I ordered it from, it's got that mark of a scammer. It's closed and you can't look at it anymore, and it's gone, and they've disappeared, and everyone's scattered to the 4 corners of the earth. So I didn't think anything would arrive, yet it did.
Indeed, it did. In fact, Aaron told me about it, and I went to the store and had a look. And my first shock was actually the scale, right? And we'll get to that in a minute. But if you want to see what they look like, here they are.
So the top one is the alien coming out of the acid bath or something. And I guess from the photos there, you can't really see the horrible detail or lack of detail because they're quite small. And on the bottom there, you have Michael Myers on the porch.
Oh, sorry, I thought were you going to pull one on the TV on front of the camera?
No, I was going to have a drink because I'm choking.
Oh, sorry. I thought when you leant over, I thought I was going to show something, so that's why I got away from the picture. So at the top you got the alien thing, right? At the bottom you got the Michael Myers thing. Believe it or not, these things are absolutely tiny. So when you compare them, this is how it turns out.
Now, I don't know the scale of the pictures they had online, but you've got to remember I've just scaled it up so they look about the same size. Now, you can see the detail on the original is a lot better than the detail on the new one. Because we've got small pictures there, it doesn't actually look as bad as it actually is, but they are very, very horribly finished. You can see on the original, the alien is actually in like translucent water. So when it lights up, you can actually see that it's glowing. On the new one, I have that lit up, but it's all been painted with solid paint. So unless you're in a dark room, you cannot actually see that there's any light inside that at all. Also, the Soul Greg King picture has been replaced by the Michael Myers that was on the porch. And as you can see, he's not actually wearing his classic mask because you can see he's got hair there, right? So he's not wearing the mask and all of that. And the paint detail is absolutely horrible. But when we switch over and look at the Michael Myers, you can see the alien there. And as you will see, the alien bears absolutely no resemblance to a real Geiger alien. It looks more like a witch or maybe Jason without his hockey mask on or something like that. But they definitely didn't get the memo of how aliens look. Now, you can see that the one that was advertised is lit up, and the one that I bought, I put in a darkened room and lit up, and you can see the light does make it through, but the whole thing is, like I said, painted with an opaque paint, so you don't get the effect that is on the actual one in the pictures. If you want to count the steps, you can see the one on the pictures is about twice as big, and the lattice on the house is about half the size. So we've got this really, really crude thing that's turned up, and it's in a resin that's the cheapest of the cheap, and then it's got the worst bodgy paint finish, and it smells bad too.
Good old Michael Myers has been chasing parked cars when you look at him down there, eh? So the funny thing about these items, everybody, is they are tiny. I couldn't believe it. I mean, that's the problem with the pictures. You can't work out the scale, but they would be like barely fit like this in the palm of your hand. They are absolutely tiny. You go, what's the point? So not even like a paperweight, really.
They make the Maltese Falcon look big.
Oh, the Maltese Budgie. Yeah, exactly right. So very, very cool. Yes. Where are you? Yeah, exactly right. Moneybags, another PayPal scamming belt. There's more to come on that. Don't you worry about that. So you're trying to tell me that ultimately these items got the Greg King seal of disapproval. Is that right there, Mr. Aaron?
Yep. Now you can see they're in the packing boxes. You can see, I guess, the packing boxes. They're about the size of just bigger than a Rubik's Cube, maybe. They're quite small. And I've put the seal of disapproval up because they are dodgy items that I will try and get a claim back from. And whenever we don't have the seal on, I get people ask me in the week, why didn't we show Greg King's seal? And I usually say because he's been eaten by Eskimos, but this week he's around.
Yeah, exactly right. So ultimately, when it comes to these two items...
Now that's poor value.
Absolutely. So if I had got them and they'd been like $10 each, I probably wouldn't have bothered. But over $100 for the pair of that's absolutely poor value.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, so we've got a bit of a story going on regarding the Lord of the Rings thing. So for people who aren't aware of what's happened, Aaron was supposed to receive this for free, right? He's been missing his Hobbit in the Home for ages now. There's been an ongoing discussion with good old Ronnie, who's over in the sales area. It's just ridiculous, this email conversation. There's been a lot more correspondence. Now, for those who remember last time, Ronnie said to Aaron to send over another $10 after sending $10 previously to get this thing shipped over. So remember, the Hobbit home was supposed to be for free. It was a free gift with the Maltese budgie. He got the Maltese budgie because it was only like this big, and he hasn't got the Hobbit in home yet. So there's a bit of correspondence going on, a bit of text to read. So you'll be able to find out where things are at. And believe me, by the end of this, you'll be shaking your head going, far out. How scammy is this? So this is what it looks like, the Hobbiton home. And we're going to go through some of the correspondence and get ready, everybody. This is an absolute classic.
So, Ronnie, you have some explaining to do. I am very disappointed, very disappointed. I was expecting a small home for Hobbit, but you have sent me the wrong items. I have just been sent a scary home for Michael Myers and a watery home for an alien. Neither of these are particularly good, and I would describe them as shoddy. Here are some photos. Now, I just have to point out here, AliExpress did not send me those. I didn't order them from AliExpress. I've ordered other stuff, and because it hasn't sent up, because this was dodgy, I thought, you know what? I'll send back pictures to Ronnie and say that they sent it to me and this is what turned up, and see what kind of response I get. So
the key thing is, exactly right. So these came from a completely different company. So what are you going to do when you get the email going, oh shit, what's the deal with that? So, but we continue on.
Yeah, as you can see, it is nothing like the product I ordered. This is like the hobbits went on a journey to a bad neighborhood. I think I have had enough of waiting for the small home for hobbits, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to now do a full investigation, handing my case over to the Soul Greg King. Kind regards, Aaron.
All right, so that's where we are at the moment. So Aaron sent the message to the guy saying that they've sent in the wrong items. And of course, when they get this, how do you think they're going to respond? So I'm just going to have a quick look here. Aaron is financing Ronnie's new yacht. The tale grew in the telling. This is all true correspondence, everybody. So when we're not making this up at all. And yeah, very, very cool. All right, so after that, after Aaron said that he's received the wrong item, what do you think Ronnie had to say? It was this.
Hi, Aaron. I am shocked that you have received these items. Warehouse is shocked also. We do not even sell these, so we are not sure how we sended them to you. Are you sure Horror House and Waterhouse is from us? Maybe you were confused. Maybe one late night you ordered these items from another site and forgot you did it. It is a common thing to happen. This is not our shoddy products. And I'll just point out, they obviously know about shoddy products. Please do not make this Soul Greg King investigate more. Get him to investigate who sold you these things. Small House for Hobbit will arrive soon and you will be happy. All the best, Ronnie.
So Ronnie's kind of crapping himself at
Yeah, someone's gone down onto the studio, onto the warehouse floor, and gone, we've made a major cock up here. Like, who sent him Horror House and Waterhouse?
So I laughed when I did that. I thought, only a bastard would say that he received the wrong items from a company who clearly didn't send them. So oh, goodness gracious me. All right, so there's a bit more coming, okay? So Aaron obviously responded back. Let's see what he had to say.
Hi, Ronnie. I appreciate that you got back to me so fast. I have passed all the info I have, the items I have received, and all our correspondence over to the Soul Greg King. He has told me that although he thinks you are a fine person, the company you're involved in is probably corrupt, and I should start the process of PayPal paybacks. He says that he is suspicious that they sent on purpose Maltese Dragon and not my Hobbit house, as you do not have them. He says that he is suspicious that they knowingly sold the Maltese Falcon at quarter scale, letting me think it was a full-size replica. He is suspicious that they take the extra postage I send and intend to ship me nothing. He says PayPal refund is the best recourse for me now. Kind regards, Aaron. So thanks, Greg, for your help in that one.
All right, so good old Ronnie's been sort of like, had the wind shoved up him. So what do you think Ronnie's going to do? Now, Ronnie could do one of two things. Ronnie can say, yep, we've cocked this one up, and we'll accept the error on this part, and we'll sort you out, and you do what you want, and it's all good and groovy. Or is he going to do what he can, be like a politician, and just try and scam his way out of it by inventing a story? So let's see what Ronnie had to say.
Dear Aaron, please do not initiate PayPal refund. You have may fine items. I think that was meant to be many. Maltese Dragon, mini Maltese Falcon prop, even now strange you got from us, but so lucky 2 miniature houses for your collection. Isn't this enough? I do not think the Soul Greg King would suggest this if he saw the items you already have. Best you deal with me and forget any internet investigations. I answer very fast and solve all your problems. All the best, Ronnie.
How about that, Ace? So he may be crapping himself, but he's not prepared to give up just yet. So isn't that absolutely unbelievable? So he reckons, so he's saying, like, hey, dude, shut up. You got some stuff. Be happy about it, right? But anyway, that's clearly not going to work. There's got to be...
He tries to now claim the stuff that was from another company as it's lucky I got it from them.
Yeah, exactly right. So Aaron obviously had to respond, and here we go.
Hi, Ronnie. My problem is still no Hobbit house. I have sent payment and then more payment, then more payment. Are you expecting me to send even more payment? Your friend, Aaron.
So as part of the scamming thing, this is the situation. Aaron hasn't received his Hobbit house. He's clearly cracking the shits. He's got... The dude thinks he sent these 2 houses, which he clearly didn't do. What is Ronnie going to do now? Ronnie could quite easily just say, it's on its way. Don't stress. We've got the tracking order number. No more money needs to be sent. You're cooking on gas, right? But...
Dear Aaron, yes, if you send more payment, I will make case a priority and Lucky Home for Hobbit will be with you fast. If you send $9.99 to cover postage, I will make sure your replacement is shipped out today. All the best, Ronnie.
Now, the problem with this is Ronnie said last week it's already on its way. Remember that?
Yeah.
So it's actually in the post on its way to you right now. We can go back and get the correspondence of that. Based on this, he's saying it hasn't been sent yet until you send another $10. Unbelievable. So how do you think Aaron responded to this?
Hi, Ronnie. I think you didn't understand my last mail. I was saying there is no way I will send you more money, not suggesting that I send you more. If you do not send me Hobbit home, I will initiate PayPal refund. Kind regards, Aaron.
Isn't that absolutely unbelievable? So based on that, they haven't sent the thing yet, and they're wanting to get more money out of it. And unbelievable. So what does everybody have to think of that? Hey, isn't that unbelievable? Yes, you're right, Gavin. Here's the gift of the keyboard. So, yeah, send Ronnie a pack of nappies. He's crapping himself. So we'll have to see if the Hobbit home turns up or not, or whether you're going to initiate your PayPal refund. But that is absolutely unbelievable. Isn't that ridiculous correspondence? And you said the company who sent you the 2 houses, they've disappeared now. Is that right?
Yep. They're gone.
Unbelievable. So would you love to meet good old Ronnie in a dark alley somewhere? Absolutely fantastic. So
we've added the 2 light up horror dioramas to Greg King's garage sale, which is looking more and more impressive every week now. I think now we've started adding some stuff to it. It would be a garage sale I wouldn't mind visiting, actually.
Yeah, exactly right. And of course, your critters down the front here, they obviously are now gone.
Yes, so the critters were a big success. We sold both the critters almost instantly, and guess what? I've ordered another 3.
Oh dear! I said to Aaron as a joke, what he needs to do is wear a T-shirt with a dog with some dollar bills hanging out of his mouth because he's a capitalist. Capitalist dog, absolutely unbelievable. So, here we go. Yeah, Rusky Babes is on it. Yeah, Ronnie's actually Jodie Whittaker getting back at you for being me too. Absolutely unbelievable. Anyway, we'll keep watching to see if the Hobbit home turns up. But yes, if you do come into the store, the little miniature houses are there, and believe me, they're tiny as. So yes, and wouldn't even hold up a book. You are right, Mr. Greg. Everything at the garage sale is $2. Absolutely fantastic. All right, so for one crappy stuff or sort of like things of stuff, I can't get the words out. Start again. From one crappy segment into another crappy segment, or at least the stuff that's in it is crappy. It's time for a bit of the old Lord Vile's Vile File.
So here we go. We've got another week, another VAR file, and it's a totally different topic this week that someone sent in a letter. So from Lord Vile's Scarlet Letter, the hot mailbag, the only mailbag that ever gets any correspondence, actually. So,
Yeah, exactly right.
Dear Lord Vile, master of all that is vile on the internet. Well, I don't know if he's master of all that is vile, but a lot of it.
No, definitely not.
I thought of a great segment for your show. Do you think you can look at Vile Happy Meal toys? Your devoted Vile acolyte, Colin Andrews.
See, the whole thing of a devoted Vile acolyte is kind of concerning. So if the Vile was just walking down the street, all these people would be going, "Oh, we're not worthy, we're not worthy." Oh, to be fair, I'd be in that queue too, so I accept that. So yes, very good. All right, good stuff. So we're talking about McHappy Meals.
Yeah, so the Vile has done some research into Happy Meals, and we're going to look at some of the worst value Happy Meals, the most disappointing one, or even the deadliest ones that have ever been released.
Good stuff. All right, off we go.
So they started bad and only got worse, but this is from the very first release of Happy Meals. Do you know what this is, Dags?
It looks like a watch of some sort, like a watch cover. You put the watch in the thing there, and you cover it over, I guess.
It doesn't work as a watch, and it doesn't work as what it's meant to be. It's called a wrist safe, and you can put your valuables around your wrist like a watch and keep them safe, except it doesn't fit anything in unless your valuables is a P or maybe a 5-cent piece. Now, McDonald's Happy Meals, when they started off, they didn't have all the tie-ins to movies and things they had now, so they had to come up with their own stuff, and that meant that a lot of the stuff they came up was pretty damn lame. And this is one of the first things they released when they hadn't really got the idea of toys for kids in Happy Meals, or things that they can play with, and maybe not like a watch that doesn't work or a safe that doesn't keep anything in. So they started off bad, and they only got worse.
Oh, yeah, because if you're going to wear something secure and you stick it on your wrist, it's not going to be very secure when it's like, okay, it might be inside the thing, but it's actually just attached by this really crappy plastic. So I don't think it's going to last long. And being bright in color probably gives it away a little bit too. So, but yes, this is, you're right. I suppose they did have to experiment. I bet you, though, if you found one of those, somebody out there will go, oh my God, there's at least a few $100 in that. So what do you reckon?
Maybe if you kept a gold nugget in it. Now, this was one of the most. This was one of the most complained about Happy Meals ever. It was from the Minions movie, and the great thing about this is, and you can look it up online and you can judge it from yourself, when you hit them on a flat surface, they kind of say some gibberish, except the gibberish sounds a whole lot like two letters, F and U.
Oh, really?
So McDonald's released this, and it was Minions gibberish, but parents started to complain immediately because it was teaching their kids to say some very, very rude things. Now, if you get a Happy Meal from McDonald's, the last thing you want for it is obscene minions.
Yeah, I bet the people who made those things, the voice box things, probably did it and thought, oh, this is the ultimate gag. Who's going to notice that? So, yes, that is
well, the
very,
really
very clever. It's like people who try to teach their cockatoos to swear, and of course, then their parrots in the house and whatever else. And of course, once they learn, they never unlearn it. So that's the way to go.
And then you're in trouble when like your bishop comes over or something.
Yeah, exactly right. Very, very groovy stuff. Now, this one's a bit of a good one.
Now, this is a really interesting one. This is also one of the most complained about Happy Meal toys ever. This was for 101 Dalmatians. Dags, can you imagine why this might be complained about?
Probably because you had to go to McDonald's. You could only get one at a time, which means you had to go into McDonald's 101 times.
Yeah. So, Screen Accurately, which isn't Screen Accurate actually, they released 101 Happy Meal toy Dalmatians. You got one per Happy Meal. Now, most Happy Meals have between 6 and 12 items that you can collect. So conceivably, if you go once a week for 6 weeks, which is about the time the promotion runs for, you can get the whole set. This had 101 Dalmatians you had to collect in 6 weeks, which meant you had to eat McDonald's or buy a Happy Meal 101 times to complete the whole set, which of course annoyed quite a lot of people.
Christy's made a point about the movies that they sound like that all the time. That's true, they do, and I mean South Park is a perfect example of that with Kenny. But to have it actually in a toy, yeah, and it's obviously for children as well. Yeah, that clearly didn't pass the pub test. But the Dalmatian thing, I mean, someone had to design and build 101 different Dalmatians. And of course, you can imagine some collector out there says, I've got 100, I'm missing one. We get some dude who's got 102. There's a double up somewhere, and I don't know where it is. So, but that's intense, isn't it? It's just like, mate, you'd be like, stick it on the kilos big time if you had to keep going. I mean, that'd cost a fortune too. Every McHappy Meal multiplied 101 times. God, it's a bit harsh.
So what's the Happy Meal now? About $6?
Oh, it says dogs. I think you said me. 103 dogs at $2 each. Yeah, exactly right. You can do the maths on that. So you do wonder if anybody was able to score all of them and whether they actually physically manufactured the whole lot or they just only get like to 80 something and they just didn't bother after that. So,
well,
you do wonder.
I did a check on eBay and there were sets on eBay and they go for about $100. So you were cheaper getting them off eBay after than trying to hunt them all down when they came out.
That's rough, isn't it? You would have thought for all the time and effort, they would have actually had a lot more value associated with them. So, yeah, exactly right. Mac has 101 heart attacks. Yeah, absolutely, totally agree with that.
They didn't tell the kids that every Happy Meal burger contained 100% Dalmatian.
Yeah, and of course, you're right, Chris. You can buy the toy separately too. But of course, when these came out, 101 Dalmatians, the internet didn't exist. So I'm guessing that if you missed out at the time, too bad, so sad. So you are right. Waiting a few decades kind of worked in our favour. So, yes, very
good.
You
imagine, though, and this would be a problem when you just need a couple left, going to the store and trying to find a store that has the ones you need.
Yeah, I don't know. Or you are right. Buy the ones that you got 15 like copies of the same one, and you sell them to all these other dudes who need them because they're the ones that they're missing. I don't know. So yeah, crazy shit.
Now, this was one of the most complained about items in a McDonald's Happy Meal, but it wasn't complained about by the parents. It was complained about by the kids because who wants to go to McDonald's and get toothbrush and toothpaste in your Happy Meal? And McDonald's actually ran this campaign a couple of times, not because kids loved it, but apparently because parents did. But if I was going to McDonald's, I guess the bonus would be to wash the taste of McDonald's out of your mouth and all the fat. But if you were a kid and you're expecting, a plane or a car or something like that, and you get Ronald McDonald toothbrush, that is not a Happy Meal that you really are looking forward to.
But if he autographed it, that would be your brush with fame. As you can see, I'm just bristling with excitement. Oh, goodness gracious me. Gavin, regarding the Dalmatians, they should have all been number stamped. Yeah, I bet they weren't, though. So, yes. But how about that toothbrush? Who would have thought that? Mate.
I know. Who would have thought it was so successful with parents? They ran the promotion about 3 times during the 80s.
Yeah, and it comes in 3 exciting colours. And how many collectors out there might have the 2, but they don't have the 3rd one, which was probably like a rarity or something. But yeah. Oh, thought you were going to say something. Yeah, cool. Good stuff.
Now, this is a really interesting one. This was a Hello Kitty promotion that they ran. And the interesting thing about Hello Kitty is you could rip her open and inside there was a toy. Now, what do you think that toy was, Dags? Do you have any idea?
I'll tell you what, just because I've had a look, I looked at this and I go, it looks like a pair of Y fronts. It's like, what's the deal with that? No, I've got no idea.
So the toy was a whistle, and it was a whistle for little kids. Now, what do we know about toys that you put in your mouth?
They tend to go down your throat.
Yeah. So this is the equivalent of McDonald's Battlestar Galactica rocket-firing Vipers, where kids not only used it as a whistle, but sucked it down their throat and ended up in the emergency room. So this was the McDonald's meal that had the potential to kill kids, not with cholesterol, with choking.
So what would happen with the kids? They get the whistle right, and they go, Pee! and then the brother would say, no, that's wussy, do a big one. They go, okay, ready? Oh, now whether they did that intentionally or not is another thing.
Well, when I was a kid, you could have just stuffed it through it full of burger meat, and I'd have been. Blah, blah, blah.
It's like, what's wrong with you, little Johnny? And he opens his mouth, and just this high pitch whine comes out. Ah, dear. Very, very good. Absolutely love it. But yes, good old warning, it's choking hazard. Yes, yeah, you think?
Now, this is an interesting one. McDonald's decided many times on and off that they were trying to go down the path of doing healthy, happy meals that encourage kids to go outside, get exercise, and do things like that. Now, this was a promo that ran in conjunction of McDonald's opening. It was an imaginary holiday camp. So all the adverts were about the McDonald's characters going on camp and away together. And you could get a water bottle, you could get a fold-up cup, you could get a pair of cutlery, and you could get the what do you call it? The thing for cooking on a campfire. But the trouble was, you couldn't actually do that with any of these things because they were so dodgily made. The water bottle, apparently, the lid wouldn't stay on and held about one mouthful of drink. The fold-up cup folded up, but it also wasn't watertight. The cutlery basically couldn't do anything. And of course, if you put something plastic over a fire to heat it up, of course, it's going to go. So they made these for, I guess, imaginary camping while you were inside. So if you could go camping with them, maybe kids would think it was fun. But if you got them and then you can't use them for camping and you can only use them inside, you'd rather get your car or your 101 Dalmatian, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I don't think this is meant to work for actual camps and fires. It's just kids for playing and all that sort of business. But yeah, if the liquid receptacles don't actually hold any liquid, that's never a good thing. So
No.
yeah, bit dodgy.
Now, everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people will remember the Mighty Ducks from the 90s. Now, the Mighty Ducks were popular. They were part of the Disney Anaheim for a long time, and there was a real team. And there was also an animated show where the Mighty Ducks hockey team were actually large ducks that played hockey. The things at the bottom there are the giveaways and the Happy Meals. Do you know what they are, Dags?
Not a foggiest.
They are actually hockey pucks with a character on the top of them. Now, what do you do with hockey pucks?
Smack the living shit out of them.
Exactly. So what do you think? What do you think happened when you smacked the living shit out of these hockey pucks?
I reckon those little duckies, they went flying.
Yes, so they absolutely disintegrated at like even the slightest pressure from a hockey stick. So McDonald's went out of their way to make hockey pucks from Mighty Ducks for kids to use, and they took them down to the ice rink, and the very first hit, they disintegrated into nothing, being one of the most useless Happy Meal toys ever. Because if you don't use a hockey puck for hockey, what do you use it for?
Yeah, well, exactly right. I actually thought it'd be good for golf practice. You sit there and you go, okay, here, little ducky, we're going to see how we go, see if the puck can stay there. And there's like a tee, and off you go.
Hey,
oh, you would just want to whack him to the shit house, wouldn't you?
Take this, you fucking duck.
Absolutely fantastic. So there we go.
So that was the Viles trip to McDonald's to have a look at what was available there. He managed to find these by buying many Happy Meals, and you can see when Ronald McDonald is that scared of something, you know you're onto something, don't you?
Yeah, exactly.
So surprisingly, there wasn't as many horrible Happy Meals as you might think there would be, but maybe he'll go back to the drive-through another time if he can. So as you can see there's a 70s picture of McDonald Land where the Vile has transported himself into the picture. So you've got Mayor McCheese, Ronald McDonald, Grimace, Chief Big Mac, Captain Cook, Hamburglar, the Professor, and the Vile. I don't know what he does to the Fry Kids, but who knows?
So what are you trying to say about all these items there, Mr. Aaron?
I'm saying McDonald's Land has been well and truly violated.
Absolutely love it. I mean, it's the law of averages says that if a company is producing toys on a regular basis, decade after decade, they're going to have a few that are tad on the dodgy side, especially the earlier ones. And they're probably the ones that people want, like that whistle. Like you said, oh, there would have been a choking hazard that would have all been chucked out or whatever. But if you said, I've got one of these, as dangerous as it is, you're probably on a bit of a winner, which is particularly groovy. Well done. And I agree with you, Mr. Vile. I don't give a puck. Yes, indeedy doody didey. What a stupid idea, though, sticky taping a friggin' duck on top of a puck and then say, go play with this kid, see how that goes. So imagine the goalie says there's a puck coming this way, someone's whacked it, and there's a duck coming the other way. It's like, which one do you stop?
It just whacked and like all these shards of plastic shoot at you from different directions.
I don't know. And the people at management would have said, oh, yeah, we didn't really think that was actually going to happen. So there you go. All right, time for a bit of interactive stuff. It's very, very cool. Let's go for it.
Ooh, baby, do you know that's what...
All right, Mr. Aaron, what are we talking about tonight for our eBay segment?
Well, because we're looking at Lost in Space, don't say we don't cater for everyone. We're looking at Nintendo games. So Nintendo games and Nintendo items on eBay, because they always go for a shocking price, I have to say.
Regarding the McDonald's thing, Gavin said he liked the early ones that transform from a food product into a character. I feel like the early ones that transform from a food product into an actual food product. So there you go. Very good. Angela's already said $5.50. Hang on. I think it's supposed to be $5.50. We haven't even seen what the item is yet, so let's kick it off. Oh, check it out, kids.
So this is a game a lot of people who grew up through the 90s and 2000s would remember. This is Banjo-Kazooie. Nintendo 64 cartridge, and this one is steel sealed. There's not a lot steel sealed because who wouldn't want to rip open a game and play it as soon as they got it? Banjo-Kazooie was popular enough that it got a sequel on the 64, and it is regarded as one of those classic games. It's a sort of run around puzzle solving game that, you know, kids enjoy and adults love as well. So one of the more popular games on the 64.
So it was Banjo-Kazooie, the brother of Banjo Patterson. So there you go. I like what Mick said. He's just turned up right in the nick of time. Well done. And, of course, Mick's a bit of a gaming person, so this should be pretty cool. All right, so Ange started off with $5.50, but I will allow him to change it because he did put it in before we got started. For this, Colin said $55. Gavin is a $2.75. Christy, 1 cent. Oh, put a bit. At least you could have said $10, Christy. Put a bit of effort into it. Don't give up just yet. $180 for Carol. Because it's $1,600. Oh, how's that for ramping the price up? Moneybag Sullivan is at $175. Williams at $300. So hang on. Angie's currently one-handed. I won't ask how that's happened. Rusky Babes is at, I can't even read that. It's meant to be 5 cents, I think, as well. So, yes, very, very groovy. The Vile, $250. He knows how to violate good old Banjo when it needs to be done. Greg King, $2. Don't forget, kids, it is still sealed. Adzi has said the Beck has said 26. Christy has said 2. Love it. Run out and buy a little bit of sarcasm to add to your burger, which is particularly groovy. All right. So Adzi himself has said $250. So it is new. It's sealed Nintendo 64 from the 1990s. What do you reckon it's worth, kids? Is it worth a lot or worth absolute tripe? Let's check it out. Still sealed. And how much did it go for? It went for a whopping brand new $10,000 effing dollars. What's the deal with that?
I don't know. Often with these things, when you get something brand new and sealed, it might be the only one that's turned up for 5 years or something, and you get someone who just has to have it for their collection. Not an ordinary person like you or I, maybe a Japanese businessman that has every single Nintendo game sealed or something like that. Now, I have seen a couple of games go up around this price. Banjo doesn't go as high as some of the other ones, but this is definitely a record that I've seen for this title.
Actually, if you had two of them, could you go ding, 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 ding? Yeah, that's dueling banjos for those who didn't get that. So there you go, kids. How about that 10th? I mean, that's just beyond the point of ridiculous. So there you go. Holy shit balls. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Well done. And you are right. Chrissy, more money than sense. It makes no sense whatsoever. So as we saw earlier, Mick got it, but he's still got to cough up an extra $8,400. So unbelievable. Perhaps if it's graded, etc., it doesn't seem to be. Otherwise, I would have said that. You would have thought it's just a mint version of the game. So, how about that? It's set the what do you call it? Yeah, actually, you're right, Gavin. You can actually buy the damn banjo, a real one, for that price, and then some. All right, so maybe that's setting the tone for tonight, because this is what's coming up next.
Well, this is a NES game, which is the Nintendo Entertainment System. It's another original factory sealed. It's from another popular franchise, Metroids. We've got, this is one of the original versions, but on all the different platforms, there have been different versions of this game. So it is one that is popular as well. So I'm thinking from what we saw from the last sealed game, surely this has got to go for a big price as well, right, Dags?
Yeah, I mean, I love the token. It's called Metroid. I can't help but think it's Meteoroid, but they missed a couple of letters, but clearly it's intentional. So there you go. All right, kids. Oh, look at this. They've ramped it up. Carol's gone to 12,500. Look at that. So there you go. And by contrast, Gavin said $5. Oh, guys, put some effort into it. So you got nothing to lose except a little bit of pride and having someone else beat you. Mick has come in with 2,500.
Everybody else was waiting for Mick to bid to give them an idea of where he thinks things land. You know?
Hang on, Mick wasn't even remotely close to the last one. He just happened to have the highest number out of everybody. Adzi is at 285. Christy's gone for 4 cents. So obviously this is going to be a long segment for you, Christy. 14.50 for Colin. Greg King is still sticking with the $2 games bin. Edge, $1 million. Even I think that's probably a bit excessive. Moneybag Sullivan, 17,500. You could pull that out of the back of the couch if you wanted to. Adzi has said that Becca said 8,200. William has said $3.50. I tell you what, such a range here. It's just crazy, isn't it? Eh? So there you go. And Rusky Babe's going to nick off to watch something else until this segment is finished. So there you go. All right, very, very cool. All right, so it's Metroid, which I must admit I've never heard of. Original factory sealed new Nintendo NTSC, which means it was made in America. Very, very cool. Good stuff. Brand new. Somebody obviously kept this in place for a period of time. How much did it go for? 6 bids. It went for a whopping $6,850.
Did Beck get it with 8,200?
So I have to have a bit of a look. Anything you want to say about this, dude?
No, it's another one that totally surprises me. The price of these games in sealed condition has absolutely shot through the roof. This one is interesting because it is a bid. So there was 4 or 6 people that were after this. So it isn't just one person that bid it up to that much. There's another person out there that's prepared to pay just about as much as that as well. So probably because they're just so hard to get in this condition.
Yeah, and you're still only off by a bit. Yeah, exactly right. I mean, it's still a lot of money, even though it's like $4,000 cheaper than the previous one. That's just crazy. So,
yeah.
And of course, you wouldn't really play it. You have to leave it in the box with the hope of reselling it somewhere in the future. So, yeah. Anyway, there you go.
So here's another one. This is Nintendo NES. This is Digger. This is a game I hadn't heard of before. So. Maybe rare or maybe just not popular, but this is another one that's boxed in amazing condition. I think, what is there, 12 bids on that one as well?
Yeah, a bit of competition, a Digger T-Rock. So sounds like a rap artist's name, doesn't it? Eh? So Christie's upped the price to 12 cents. That's all pretty grimmy. And we'll have to see what that goes. So what does everybody else think of the old Digger? Colin has gone for 5. So we've gone from 12 cents to 5,500 from which is particularly groovy. Gavin has said 17.65. Adzi is at 20. It's funny, isn't it? People have got no idea what these things would sell for. So yeah, indeed. Was it investors with a lot of bank, not so much gamers? Yeah, I would agree with you on that one, Mick. It's people who are buying them to collect them, not to play them, and may just focus on the collecting side. Moneybag Sullivan has said 7,500. Adzi has said, Becca said 2,900. Ange is at 2,000, and Carol is at $10,000. So you do wonder, don't you? What do you reckon this thing is going to go for? Digger. What does ITA stand for? Is that where it came from?
I'm not sure on that one.
Yeah, fair enough. Nintendo NES. William said 4,500, and violating the Digger T-Rock is the Viola, $2,001, and Mick himself said 2,000. So very good stuff. All right. So how much do you reckon it went for, kids? A Digger in Nintendo NES. It's in good condition, still with the box. Absolutely fantastic. 12 bids. How much did it go for? It went for a whopping $14.50.
So there you go. This is one of those things that interests me because there's a lot of people who are collecting, any games in good condition just so they can have a good set of the games. This is the type of stuff at that price I would probably be buying and putting away, because you can see with some of the premium titles, the price has gone through the roof. You would think some of these will follow, even if they are lesser known titles.
What I can't work out is how do you have 12 bids and you only get to $14.50? It's like $1 a pop. It's just like, man, it's absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? Because when you see all the bids, you think, oh, the numbers are jumping up massively, but clearly not. So, yeah, absolutely fantastic. So, not sealed. Yes, Mr. Mick, you got to read the fine print, son. So, yes, indeedy. Good stuff. All right, so that goes to show that we're not necessarily having all high-priced items. So, what do you reckon? You're going to go for a bit of the old Donkey Kong?
Now, this is Donkey Kong Country. This was a game, a crate that came with extra games in it. So it was a specially packed. It was a specially packed edition of this game that came with all the different games from the Super Nintendo. This is complete, and this is an Australian version. So you've got to remember, in Australia, a lot of people like to collect the Australian version because it works. And if you get the NTSC, you have to get different converters and stuff to play different systems from overseas. So this is probably going to be a popular one, but you never know, because it might have gone under the radar. It might have got a couple of bids and just gone for $20, or it might have gone for 15,000, like Ange is telling us.
Indeed. So Ange is from his early attempts where he was only chucking in a few dollars. Now he ramped it right up to 15 grand. Mick has at 2,200. Adzi is at 250. Collins at 2,000. Carol 22,000. Imagine that, the look on your other half's face when you walk home and said, "Oh, yeah, honey, I could have bought a Hold'em Commodore, but no, I bought myself a box Donkey Kong game for 22." Gavin is a 30 fracking thousand dumbass bucks. Exactly right. Well, you know, if you're talking about fracking, and obviously you're looking for gas under the ground, so maybe that's where the money's going to come from. Christy said $1. She's getting more and more up as we get further and further along. Moneybag Sullivan's at 17,500. William has said 4,500. Greg King has stuck his nose back in for an extra $2. So far, he's been way off the mark, except for the last one. He almost got there. Violating Donkey Kong, who's one shoot as the Vile at 1,500 barrels. Rebecca's finally joined us. Well done. Putting a row bids in at 48.03. How good is that? Very cool. Donkey Kong Country, and I used to play Donkey Kong all the time when it first came out in the arcades. It was absolutely fantastic. A game that made absolutely no sense whatsoever, but geez, it was a lot of fun. All right, very, very cool. Long boxes complete. Now, if I'm going to take a guess, I would say the price of this would go up because it's Australian release. So there you go for those investors overseas. So how much do you reckon it went for, kids? It went for a whopping $6,500.
So William was 4.5. Was there any? Rebecca was 4.8.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that might be it off the top of my head. Rebecca, you might actually have this one. How about that? You still got to cough up an extra couple of grand, though. You're not getting it that easily.
She's assembling quite an impressive games collection tonight.
Tell you what, yeah, isn't that insane? So there you go, 6,500. How come? Any reason why you would it be that much, dude? What do you reckon?
No, I think all of this stuff from this era is, especially in the condition, as soon as you get dents and wear on the box, the condition goes right down. You've got to remember this has probably got 5 mint games inside as well. So this is a bit of a surprise, but not really that unusual compared to some of the games that are going individually for the same kind of price. So I was surprised because we haven't done a Nintendo one for about a year, and the prices have definitely jumped up quite a bit.
Yeah, you're right, Mr. Mick. You need to auction yours. Obviously, there's a bit of money there to be made if you've got it. All right, the lucky last one.
This is interesting because just before lockdown, I sold my version of this. This is sealed Pokemon Emerald version, Nintendo Game Boy Advance. So this is a more recent one. Game Boy Advance is a couple of generations after the stuff we've been looking at so far. Pokemon games are always popular. They have always got a new version of Pokemon games on the go. I think it's Diamond and Pearl at the moment. Who would have thought that Prince's backup singers were given Pokemon games? But there you go. So this is a mint sealed one. Now, Mick might be able to answer this for me. I remember buying brand new Game Boy games, and I don't remember them being sealed in plastic. I remember, taking them to the counter, the box, and they would put the game cartridge in the box. So I don't remember them being sealed. So this might be a particularly unusual one if it is an anomaly and has been sealed for the last 15, 20 years.
Indeed. What is the reason we have to ask ourselves? All right, Gavin started off at 37. Greg is still sticking with his $2. Moneybag Sullivan's at 75. Carol's at 8. No one's really keen on this one. Mick has put a few extra bucks in at 750. Becky's already had 2 wins already. He's at 982. Williams at 120. Ange is at 6. Collins at 25. Adzi is at 250. Chrissy said, yeah, she's definitely not going for it. So there you go. This segment is unusual. Well, we are all unusual here. What can I say? And violating good old Pokemon is the vial at $900. It is still sealed in a bag and everything. How groovy is this? Nintendo Game Boy Advance. What does everybody think of this? Brand spanking new. Yay, team. And I agree with you, Christy. I couldn't give a rat's bum about this one either. Mick says he used to sell them and games are all taken out in drawers till sold. Does that answer your question, dude?
Yeah, that's what I remember too.
Yeah, very, very cool. All right, so how much you reckon it went for? Sealed Pokemon Emerald version, absolutely fantastic. If you don't like the color, don't worry. Nothing the can of spray paint won't fix. It went for a whopping $2,500.
And I'm thinking Beck got it again at 982 because the next highest was 900, I think.
Yeah, I just got to find it. Anything you want to say about this while I'm looking?
Yeah, I'm absolutely spewing. I had an absolutely mint one of these that I sold for $500. So, so when I saw this, I was like, dole. But you know what? I can't be mad because I got what it was going for at the time. But it's one of those things that proves the longer you hold on to stuff, sometimes the more it goes for. And in this case, I'd have got it 5 times as much if I held it an extra year.
Very good. All right, Beck, you've got it, but you still got to cough up an extra $1,500 or something. So how absolutely insane is that? Oh, my goodness, guys. What's the deal?
Well, I think as well, this is Pokemon's gone through the roof and Nintendo's gone through the roof. You add those 2 franchises together and it goes through the stratosphere.
Unbelievable. So, yes, very good stuff. All right, well, that actually brings us to the end of our eBay section, which is particularly groovy. And, of course, now, Rusky Babes, you can come back to the show, son, because it's about time we got to get back into our feature presentation, which is particularly cool stuff. Hang on, I just got to press a couple of buttons there. And so, Mr. Aaron, I understand we're going to be talking about something very, very exciting.
We are. So... if you've been watching the show, I think most of the people hanging around have for the earlier part of the year, we've done a occasional section on the fantasy worlds of Irwin Allen, and we've looked at all of his shows so far, except for the big one, which is Lost in Space. And there we go. So Lost in Space. I love the music for Lost in Space because it was done by Johnny Williams, or as he is better known, John Williams. And I have gone to a couple of concerts where they have given John Williams sort of retrospective. And one of the best things I ever heard was both the Lost in Space themes played back-to-back live in orchestra, which I was shocked by because I didn't think they would do it. But it was an amazing thing to hear. We had a John Williams concert in the city a couple of months ago. I don't know if they did the Lost in Space stuff then. What are your memories of Lost in Space, Dave?
Yeah, my contribution is probably going to be pretty minimal. I couldn't stand the show because Dr. Smith gave me the red hot squirts big time. And I know he was meant to be an annoying character, but the problem was he was so annoying I switched off and I couldn't handle it. And I actually was shocked to learn that when Lost in Space and Star Trek were airing at the same time, Lost in Space actually outrated Star Trek. I go, what? How is that even possible? But I guess it has a huge appeal with a lot of people. And good on it too. So yeah, very good.
One of the things I have found with Lost in Space, and I think you'd probably agree because you don't like Dr. Smith, is I like Lost in Space, but I can't binge watch Lost in Space. It's a good show to watch once a week, but it is one of those shows, if you binge watch it, Dr. Smith becomes very, very annoying very, very fast. So from a comedy villain on a weekly sort of show, he was good. But if you get it now when you had videos and DVDs, you can watch about 2 episodes and go, I'm done with Lost in Space. Of course, Dr. Smith didn't start off as the comedy villain, though, did he? He was
No,
much more
I
serious.
did see the pilot, and he was a bit of a bad bastard in that. Christy said, "How is it he can guest star if he's in most episodes?" And as William said, it was in his contract. Very good. And I'm expecting Rusky Babes is going to be typing out a shitload of fun factoids tonight. So, yes, good stuff. What? I had a Zachary Smith ring up at work, but okay, his bubble-headed boobies. Yeah, exactly right. It's very funny. You can't kind of say that these days because people get a bit offended with the term booby. But anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
So, yes, good old Lisa, Lost in Space Australia used to be a fan club here once upon a time, and good stuff. And I agree with you, Colin. Oh, the pain. Yes, indeedy, doody, didy.
Well, you would probably remember this, Dags, growing up through the 70s and particularly the 80s, when there was only 3 series of Lost in Space and there was 4 series of Star Trek. These shows were on par with popularity. And like you said, there was a Lost in Space fan club and it was quite big. And there were Lost in Space live shows. I remember at the Athenaeum, there was a live sort of make it up as you go along show for Lost in Space. And then I remember one of the most amazing events that ever happened to me. I was walking up the Burke Street Mall and there was a queue out of Virgin Megastore. You know, it was right up the top end of the city. And I'm like, who is this queue for? And it was actually for Jonathan Harris. And Jonathan Harris was doing a signing, touring Australia with the robot, would you believe? And he was even on Ernie and Denise. So Lost in Space was a big show in Australia.
I think one of the things, even though it didn't appeal to me, but I can imagine why it would appeal to most people because there was something for everybody. So if you liked your male heroes, you had those. If you had the female actors, you obviously, for kids, we obviously dialed into Will, and if you like your robots and whatever. So there's something for everybody, and maybe that's one of the reasons why. And also the whole family thing too. People say we can watch it as a family, watching our family sitting in a lounge room, and there's a family on a spaceship sailing around the universe. So maybe that had something to do with it as well. So
you are absolutely correct because it works in the same way that 66 Batman works, where as you're a kid, you watch it and it's a serious crime-fighting show. And you watch Lost in Space as a kid, and because Dr. Smith is so terrified of everything is terrifying as a kid because you haven't got the reassuring adult there to say, no, we'll take care of this. But then as you grow up and watch it, you can see the comedy from an adult, how they are sending it up. And you can see, I guess, Guy Williams in particular getting sidelined till basically he's a living piece of set dressing by the end, getting progressively more cheesed off by Will Robinson, the robot, and Dr. Smith taking over the whole show.
Yeah, that would be a tad annoying. Speaking of which, Adzie's put up Lanier's earlier days. That's obviously Billy Mimi. He ended up being Lanier in Babylon 5, which is particularly groovy. So, Vile said Penny was the Vile's childhood crush. Said that's another thing too, because it had young girls in it. If you're a young dude watching young girls, I mean, you put join the dots on that one, and that was something that probably would have appealed to a lot of people as well. So it's something for everybody, and I guess that's probably why it works so well. If it was just like the family was just all males, obviously you alienated a massive amount of the cast. If all females, same thing applies. So you mix it all up, and it works out quite well. But you are right, though. Yeah, when the kid, the annoying doctor and the robot start taking all the screen time, you can imagine some of the other cast members will be getting a bit shirty. But here we go. The first one's come out. Fun factoid. 20th Century Fox Batman, the company's camp just was infectious. So, yeah, I think the 60s has got something to do with that as well. And probably the wacky tobacco they were smoking back then too. So, very good. Actually, and some of the same costumes turned up. Well, funny enough, here's a picture of some.
Yes. So this is series 2, where it is interesting. I think we had a series 1 pick. It's probably out of order. But series 2, when they went into color, it was wow. It is one of the most technicolor colored shows you will ever see, where they really took use of, I guess, color design in the costumes and everything, including the backgrounds, where if you've watched the black and white series and then you go to the color series, it is almost a smack in the face with psychedelic color. They really did embrace that sort of 60s vibe of color and rainbows, and everything is bright greens and bright golds and all of that.
Yeah, most of that was to do with the fact that color television was out and about, and that's why Star Trek was so colorful. Everybody said, "Oh, you would need a lot of color just to so people can say, well, I spent $50,000 on a color TV because that's what it cost pretty much back then, if you will.
Yeah.
I want to see some damn color, so you don't want all dribs and drabs, mate. You make it as all as fluorescent as possible." And of course, that was once again echoing the '60s counterculture at the time. So, yeah, black and white was definitely not going to cut the mustard. Oh, look at this! He's on a roll tonight. I'm not even reading these. Questing Beast costume turned up a Batman as a fake dinosaur and actually hatched by Egghead. How good is that?
Absolutely.
Oh,
And for bonus points, Russell, there was the Dodo Bird costume there from another sitcom in the 60s. Can you identify that one?
oh, you can just hit on Google for that one if you. But no cheating, Rusky Babes. Either you know it or you don't. So yes, I'm very, very agree.
Here is the Series 1 opening titles, and like all the Irwin Allen shows from this period, they had almost a house style of opening titles, and Lost in Space is probably one of the most iconic opening title sequences in the history of sci-fi television. Every series had a different set of opening titles, and everyone is instantaneously recognizable when you either hear the theme or see the actual opening titles.
I love a little bit of a no-brainer fun factoids. Lost in Space and Voyage also shared the same costumes. They're made by the same company and the same people, dude. So of course they're going to be sharing stuff. And there's always room for a bit of Doctor Who references, like the fact he's actually spelled it correctly too. So well done, Mr. Williams. So yes.
So that alien dodo turned up in an episode of Bewitched.
Ah, there you go. So which is that? Exactly right. That was another colourful show too, and that actually makes the shows actually fun to watch because the colour is really, really good. And
Yes.
And even though it's totally unrealistic, I mean, you don't mind a bit of flash and dazzle, and you go, that's really, really grippy. It just stands out, it pops, and I can imagine cats, and little children just like watching just for the colours would be absolutely fantastic. So yeah, very cool.
And this is Series 3, and Series 3, I find all the series of Lost in Space good for different ways. Series 3 is where they started to send things up, and of course Series 3 where you meet space hippies and all these amazing characters, but of course everybody's favorite is Tybo there, the giant carrot man, in the episode where Dr. Smith gets turned into a stick of celery. Yes, that was an episode of Lost in Space.
Rusky Babes has actually told you he didn't know that one, so there you go. So very good. So you win the car, Mr. Aaron. So how about that? Good stuff.
There you go. So it's a tie because he knows a heck of a lot of stuff that I don't know. That's for sure.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Anyway, so being a show on collectibles, though, we love to look at the history of the show and talk about our memories of it. But we do like to look at the collectibles it spawned. This slide shows some of the more unique aliens that were in the show. Probably my favorite, and I found it so scary at the time, is the bottom one there, where there was a machine that made clones of Dr. Smith, and Will got stuck in the machine and came out as a mini Dr. Smith. Years and years before Mini-Me, there was Mini Will in Lost in Space as Dr. Smith. I do like the giant lizard in the top there, where they've obviously got a Aurora Triceratops kit and then super glued it to a real lizard, which they used to do a lot back in the 60s when they wanted to do dinosaurs.
Yeah, exactly right. I just got to check something that Rusky Babes has sent through. No, it's all right. All good. Yes, exactly right. So, yeah, we move on. Good done.
So Lost in Space is interesting because Lost in Space actually spawned merchandise years before the show was actually released. How is this possible? Golden Key Comics used to do all the Irwin Allen TV shows. They did Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea comics, and we've looked at them in the past. They did Time Tunnel and Land of the Giants. Now, it was just a coincidence, I guess, that Golden Key Comics were already doing a show called Space Family Robinson. And you might realize that Lost in Space was kind of based on, the Swiss Family Robinson, who were lost in the desert island, but they switched it to a science fiction show. Now, Golden Key Comics were doing this for about 3 years before Lost in Space came along, and they considered actually suing Irwin Allen for stealing their idea, except they already worked really closely with Irwin Allen on a lot of these other comics. So rather than suing him, they asked if they could avoid that by retitling their comic Lost in Space. And so after about 20 issues or 15 issues, Space Family Robinson became Lost in Space. And if you were a Lost in Space fan, you were probably then confused when you bought the comic and there was no Dr. Smith and no Robot, and there was Tim and Tam as the two kids instead of Will and Penny. But that's one of those weird things which ran concurrently with Lost in Space, and Lost in Space fans collect those comics.
Yeah, the irony of the fact that they both got the family's got the same surname. Yeah.
And so Lost in Space comics not only started before Lost in Space, but they ran for many, many years after Lost in Space. So Lost in Space ran for 3 series in the 60s. Lost in Space comics started in the early 60s and ran for 20 years. And the last issue was by Whitman Comics that took over Golden Key in about 1982. So it was a very, very popular comic outside the Marvel and DC, and probably one of the longest non-Marvel DC running comics in history.
So did they use any of the stories from the comics in the show?
Well, what's really interesting, I looked at that and they really didn't. And when we go to the next slide, you will see the very final issue featured the Cyclops from the first episode of Lost in Space. So they basically ran with no ideas or no stories lifted from the show. And then the very last issue there on the bottom right-hand side, you can see that the Robinsons are fighting the Cyclops. So as the comic ended, it caught up to where the TV show started, which is quite interesting.
That is an interesting one. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Rusky Babes, he's typing all those out, so I've got to put him up. Excuse me, about the cosplay lizard. I think it was in the previous picture. So there you go. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these things get reused time and time again, so it's not surprising at all. But yeah, that's really, really cool, actually, about the comics and all that. So yeah, Space Family Robinson, very, very cool. Then this looks like the picture we're going to be showing you now, I think, is to do with more comics, and it's a little bit more mature in this design.
It is. So Lost in Space, of course, had a break. The series ended. There was always attempts of revivals and things like that, and attempts at movies. This is before the movie came out. The comic book came back, and it kind of continued on from where the series left off. So you could consider this as maybe series 4. The interesting thing about this is I love Lost in Space. I love the comic, but I've got to say it was way over-sexualized. You can see that all the girls have their clothes ripped off, and from comic to comic, you could see they were trying to work out ways to make the girls sort of be, I guess, how do you naked more and more with each issue. And it was actually an issue for me because I like Lost in Space, but Penny Robinson is a little girl in my head. So when you see the over-sexualized versions of it on this, it became a bit of an issue.
Yeah, so this is issue 1 up here, I'm assuming. Is that right?
It is, yes.
Yeah. So they clearly use that mantra, the old sex sells thing, and they've really pushed the envelope, as I said. Now, the characters, the 2 girls, they're both underage, aren't they, in the show?
No, I think Judy is I think she's over 18. I'm not sure. I always thought Judy and Don were an item, but
one of them is underage, right?
Yeah, Penny was
so
definitely.
You are right. The fact that they're doing this whole sexualized thing with these 2, you are right. They're pushing the envelope clearly, and they're obviously aiming for a specific market. And I agree with you too. It is sort of like crossing the lines of particularly decency. You're right. Violated in space. That's not far from the truth, actually. Yes, unbelievable. But yeah, I looked at that straight away and I go, oh, all right, where are we going with this? So yes, indeed.
If we stay on that slide for a second, one of the best comics I've ever read, though, is in the Lost in Space line. And it's not because it's a particularly good story, but it's because it actually reconciles what we were seeing in the 3 series of Lost in Space. And if you look at the bottom middle there, you've got the one with Penny writing in her diary. And the comic is written as 2 parts. So you get the top part, which is John Robinson's Starship Journal. And then you've got the bottom part, which is Penny's diary. And they're both the same story seen from 2 points of view. And what it shows is the first series of Lost in Space, which is Sirius, is obviously taken from John Robinson's ship's journals. And then the 3rd series, where there's carrot people and things like that is obviously taken from Penny's diary. And I did think it was a really ingenious way for the writer to say, hey, this is how the tone of Lost in Space changed, because we were seeing it from different points of view. And I don't think I've ever seen that in another comic before or after.
Very cool. The Viola said that the design is very similar to the Gore book covers, and they were very, like scantily clad females and all that. As I said, it's the whole sex sells thing, and unfortunately, that's just the way it was back then, and it was a very common thing. So it's almost like saying, "Oh, okay, we need to target this particular audience. How do you do it? This is the path to go down,
Yeah.
even if it's completely out of character for the character." So, yep,
Yeah.
I hear.
And this is sort of the rest of the series
Yeah.
of Lost in Space. It was popular. It ran for a couple of years. I do have the whole set. You can see there it finished it as it ended, where you've got the annual there again with Penny and Judy basically chained up in their clothes being ripped off. So it was definitely aiming for that sort of, I guess, audience that if they tried to do that now, I don't think they'd get away with it.
Yeah, and it just, I mean, look, they're actually, they look like adult females in that particular image, and they're not. So, you are right, Rusky Babies. It is the Lost in Space Bondage Annual. It's completely taken the concept of the show and going in a completely wrong direction with it. But that's how people marketed things at the time. And yeah, it is what it is. So, yeah.
Yeah. Now, Lost in Space was also popular globally. So we've seen with a couple of the other Irwin Allen shows that they did take off overseas in different countries. Lost in Space took off in a lot of different countries. There were probably too many comics for me to show. So I've got some of the highlights here, and you can see that they've got monster covers. Attacking the chariot was a big theme. I guess the Japanese loved the kaiju, and to have like a Lost in Space alien sort of environment to pick and choose from, that worked really well. I did like the ones I've printed out there, which are cross sections of the Jupiter and cross sections of the robot and how the internal workings of the robot, and then a guide to monsters, which is a little bit hard to see down the bottom there. Some of the monsters look like they're straight out of the episodes, and other ones look like they're straight out of Godzilla movies. So they really sort of took the vibe of Lost in Space and then adapted it for the local market. Those are quite hard to find, but they're lovely items.
I do like the idea that if you're doing a show that you're in a spaceship, you're out in the vastness of space, you do come across aliens and various other things that you've never seen before. And I guess from an audience's point of view, they'd be looking at, what are we going to discover this week? What are we going to find? And it, ironically, unlike Star Trek, where everybody's a part of the Federation and all the rest of it, for Lost in Space, for I guess for a lot of the characters, it really was a first contact scenario for everything, wasn't it? It's like the first time we've seen this, it's the first time we've seen that, and they're having to deal with it accordingly. So that was probably something that a lot of people think, okay, what is going to happen next? And I reckon that's a very good
I used
concept.
to watch Lost in Space, and I'd go, gee, it's amazing how many intergalactic space wizards and minor 49ers there are.
Right. There's always room for one more. What can I say, eh?
Yes. Now we've seen with a lot of different movie franchises and TV franchises, you've hit it big time when you get a series of cards. And Lost in Space is a particularly good series of cards. They're black and white, but they're very atmospheric. They're totally collectible. They're very hard to find. Even the empty packets go for hundreds of dollars. There was a reissue of the set in the 90s, which I thought, that's great. Now I can get a reissue of the set. I didn't pick one up, and now the reissue goes for thousands of dollars. So they are a great set, but out of my budget. I was looking, damaged cards on eBay go for about 30 or 40 US each.
Yeah, I can imagine that, because one of the things that the show does have is a lot of longevity in terms of the eyes of the fans, which is funny because unlike using Star Trek as an example, which continued on its franchise for decades afterwards with new shows and movies and all the rest of it, other than the remake of the series only a few years ago, Lost in Space just stopped. Nothing else has come out afterwards. So the fact that, but even like Doctor Who, so unlike like it just finishes in the 60s and then nothing ever comes out afterwards, and yet it still has this core fan base and this fan following for decades afterwards. That's pretty impressive. You do wonder if all these other shows, whether it be Doctor Who or Star Trek, finished after 3 years, would they, decades later still be as warmly followed? It's hard to say, but that's a testament to the quality of the show, I guess.
Lost in Space does have that something about it. I know that you say you don't like it because of Dr. Smith. I know when I was watching Doctor Who and kids at school were teasing me because it was a kids show, Channel 10 repeated Lost in Space, and they watched it and thought it was fantastic. And I'm like, how are they calling me a nerd for watching Doctor Who and they think Lost in Space is fantastic,
Yeah. You're right, Rusky Babes. I did forget there was the film. Yep, thank you very much
Yeah.
for that. But I think for a lot of the fan base, I mean, I can't imagine anybody saying yes. I prefer the movie over the TV series. And yeah, but
No.
yeah, you are right. Sorry if I did miss that one. Yeah, very groovy.
Yep, and this is a Brazilian set of cards on the left. It was actually a sticker album, and I would have felt quite ripped off by this. It's a little hard to see. I couldn't do everything with Lost in Space big size because we just run out of time. But half the series were fantastic color pictures from Lost in Space, and the other half of the series were just real rockets and Gemini mission and pictures of comets and asteroids. And I know as a kid, if I opened one of those packets and I got no robot, but I got like the Apollo mission astronaut, I'd have felt really ripped off. The other set of cards there, the more colourful ones on the right, were an Australian set that came with the videotape releases. And these were another one of those things. This happens a few times with Lost in Space, where, there's 18 videos, yet there's like 60 cards to the set and you've got one per video. So it's absolutely impossible to assemble a set unless you worked at a video library or worked at a shop and managed to go through them and pull all the cards out. I don't know how anyone was meant to get a complete set if you only got one per video and it was random.
Yeah, totally agree. And you're right, Colin. I did actually mention the remake. That was what I was referring to, the Netflix series. So, yes, which I actually thought was fantastic. I really, really enjoyed. They did an excellent job with it. So, but that's not what we're discussing. I don't even know if there's even any collectibles for the remake thing, or let alone the movie. Everything's all to do with the original stuff, which is really great.
There is, but we're looking mainly at the classic series. This is cards again. This is a Japanese card game. And what's great, some card games are just adaptations of another game with Lost in Space or whatever, slapped on top. This did have all original brand new art that was available, was only available in Japan. And you can see it's painted art, so it is unique art. And then there's the more recent Inkworks set that was released, again, about 10 years ago now, which is a really lovely set, which highlights different creatures and actors from every episode. Again, really nice collectibles for Lost in Space. If you like the show, you definitely could collect a lot of cards and you'd have a great collection.
So, in terms of, this is a simple question. So, considering there were so many characters, and as I said earlier, there's something for everybody. From a collecting point of view, was there one character, and it's probably either the robot or the kid who stood? No, not even the kid. Probably the robot. Take the robot out, and the human characters. Was there one who stood out from a collectible point of view who marketed and sold better than anybody else? Was it Smith, Will, or someone else?
Dr. Smith.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Smith. It is interesting. It is interesting because on the comics, there's no real Dr. Smith covers. They're all the girls. But Dr. Smith, far and away, has the most collectibles outside the robot dedicated to him.
Isn't that funny, eh? And you're right. He did start off as the bad guy in the show, and he was actually good in the pilot. I must admit, the pilot was actually quite good. If you take it seriously, it's really dumb. Yeah, well, that's 60s TV for you. TV can have space version of Patrol. It's really good. Yeah, exactly right. Like a lot of things that were made decades ago, if you got to watch them, you got to watch them in the right mindset. You can't look at them through 2022 eyes. You've got to really wind your brain back. If you do that, like when you watch a lot of classic 1950 sci-fi movies, clearly they're going to be B-grade, cheesy, whatever. You just got to take it at face value, and then you enjoy them a hell of a lot more, rather than saying, well, this is crap compared to today's stuff. No, you don't do that. So, yeah, Good stuff.
And we're still on cards and sets of cards here. There was another set of Japanese cards that you could buy. And then down the bottom is actually a postcard album. So you could buy a postcard album and then you rip the different postcards out of it. So again, Lost in Space has to be, probably if you're a card collector, one of the most, it has, one of the most wide range of different card sets from all over the world, from different decades as well. So there's a lot of interest in collecting Lost in Space cards, and none of them go particularly cheap online. They're still very desirable.
Unless I'm mistaken, Smith in this picture is wearing a military uniform. Is that right?
Yeah, in the first series, especially the first episode, he was in a military uniform. When he snuck aboard the ship, that's how he managed to be there. He was in the military, but he was a spy and a traitor and a coward in the end too.
Actually, believe it or not, here's a fun factoid for you guys, and you probably already know this. Apparently, I believe that in the sequence where he comes out of the hiding hole and he's in the chair, that wasn't Jonathan Harris, because Jonathan Harris struggles with claustrophobia. So they needed a stand-in actor. That's the reason why there's an edit between the guy coming out and when you cut to him coming up. How's that for a fun factoid? Ah, there we go.
Everyone
Shane,
here.
did you know that?
I don't know if I did or I didn't. I might have heard it, but I think you got me on that one, Dags.
Dude, stroke my ego. Go, I didn't know that, Dags. Oh my God, I'm almost as cool as Rusky Babes. What can I say, eh?
I didn't know that, Dags. I think you're as cool as Rusty Babe.
Completely convincing. What can I say? I'm waiting for Rusky Babes to come back going, oh, that's school one for Dags, because I didn't know that either. Very, very cool. Or I could have just made it up. No, it's not true. It's actually quite
So we're
true.
moving on to board games, and I love the Lost in Space board game, but I've never had this one. And this is a very cool board game. It's like a 3D action board game, which basically means you play it on different levels, a lot like Vulcans love their chess. But it is a hard one to get because all of the cardboard pieces you build on top of each other. And you can imagine it doesn't look like thick cardboard. You can imagine after a couple of plays, the tabs are going to get broken and the cards aren't going to fit together. So a lot of these would have been thrown out because basically it's a great big cardboard sort of structure you build, and then you play by moving the pieces around on it. But what an amazing board game to have, and a way to play Lost in Space. It's a lot different from most of the board games that turn up, which are just, the same board game with the different logos slapped on and you play Ludo kind of thing. The Lost in Space one, this one was totally different from all the other board games going around at the time.
Yeah, I think the 3D thing, the fact you have multiple levels is absolutely ingenious because a lot of board games, Monopoly, Scrabble, all that sort of stuff, even like ones related to TV shows and movies, which just flat board, move the pieces. But having a 3D thing, we got multiple levels. Yeah, that's pretty ingenious. And what you do wonder if they got the idea from the 3D chess thing from Star Trek. I don't know, just put it out there. So, yeah, very groovy.
And the one on the left here is the board game that I guess more people would be familiar with because it was released. It was released locally by Milton Bradley, and I have one behind me on the shelf. It's one of my favorite Lost in Space collectibles. Going to the other side of things is the incredibly rare Greek board game released for Lost in Space in Greece, and it just shows you the weird global appeal that this show had, where you get Brazilian cards and Greek board games and things like that. So it really was something that connect with people in different levels all over the world. It is a really phenomenal show for being able to pick up an audience just about anywhere.
I love this comment from Rusky Bays. What you need to do is get the sequence from Star Trek where Kirk and Spock are playing 3D chess, take the chess set out and put in the 3D Lost in Space game. Digitally Photoshop that in. That'd be an absolute winner. Oh, well done, Mr. Rusky Babes. I reckon that's a classic. Well done, sir.
That's beyond my Photoshop skills, but I'd love to see it done.
Yep.
This is another set. This is another play set. It's not a board game, but it's a switch and go set. So I don't know if anyone had these as a kid. I had one, but it wasn't a Lost in Space one, where the little cars run around on almost a piece of string, and you could organize the set. You could organize the track in different ways. Usually there was instructions of how to put it together, or you could make up your own ways, and then you set the little, in this case, space chariot off, and it rolls around the set. This is an incredibly rare toy to find. This is a very cool big toy. It would have been, if you were growing up at the time and this was the big box under the Christmas tree, this was the major toy for the year if you could get your hands on one. I have never seen one in Australia. I've only ever seen images online. It has really amazing graphics, lots of different stuff from the show. It's got the robot, the space chariot, most of the characters. What more could you want from a Lost in Space game?
Yeah, it's pretty groovy, isn't it? Just by looking at the picture, you can sit in there thinking, oh, yeah, as a kid, you'd be just going, bring over the friends and have a whale of a time in this one. Nah, good stuff. Well done. That's what you call being really inventive and thinking, dare I say it, outside the box.
And then we've got the other thing, and this is interesting as well, because usually in the 60s, they repackaged existing guns, as we've seen on a lot of episodes, and just said, it's the Star Trek gun, or it's this gun, or it's that gun. With the Lost in Space one, they actually tried to look for guns and stuff that were used in the series, and at least they changed it to silver and red like the ones that appeared in the series as well. It is more than most of the guns at the time were, because usually you would have it firing a projectile or something like this, but this actually has a helicopter blade on the end, and so when you fire it, it shoots out the blade, and it can go up to 40 feet away, which would have been pretty impressive at the time. And if you were trying to look at something that sort of emulated a laser, This kind of has the kind of circular disc feel that some of the lasers from those kind of guns had at the time. So that was a pretty cool item. I've never seen one of these for sale. There's a few people that collect guns and space guns, and I don't know any of them who've managed to track this one down in Australia.
So a couple of things I want to point out. So this is, I mean, you obviously work out the characters depending on who is in the picture. So this is clearly meant to be Will, right? And what's this sound effect up here? Wee! It's sort of like, yeah, right. And he's like plugging some alien. So he's got the aggro face going on. So that's not a good look. I must admit, the design looks very groovy. That would, Rusky Babes, who's renowned for making prop guns for movies, would be loving this one. This is straight out of a 1950s special. And this picture down the bottom here, you look at that, you take this dude out, who's obviously in the series, but this could be a classic science fiction painting from the 1950s regarding, like, these are just generic characters. So, yeah, it's really cool.
Well, those two pictures are interesting. Again, until I did this episode, I'd never seen them. They're actually jigsaw puzzles. And they would be absolutely fantastic ones to put together. The one up the top is the same image as the board game, but there was two in this series, and the image below that you were pointing out as a classic sci-fi image, I had never seen before, and I thought that was an amazing piece of art as well. So it's interesting you picked that up as well.
Yeah, very cool. Rusky Babes collectibles actually used in the show. One episode of Robots Hail the Real Robot as a God. Did you know that?
Yeah. Yes, yeah. It's famous for that by the time Series 3 came along, there was Lost in Space merchandise, and the show's producers go, well, it's cheaper to buy, 20 dozen of these robots than try and make our own miniature robots.
Yeah, it's a common thing. I've seen that actually, even believe it or not, in Star Wars, when they got to Return of the Jedi and they needed models to put in for the spaceships, they just bought models off the shelf and just made those. Why build them from scratch? So, yeah, it's a very, very clever thing, and it makes it the ultimate trivia quiz, which is particularly groovy. So, good stuff.
So here's some interesting items. We did see that there was some of these mini albums from Japan for some of the other series, but Lost in Space got two, and they got a blue one and a red one. And I think of the other series, we've only seen blue ones. So these are like the mini albums that we got in Australia. I remember having Disney ones. These were only released in Japan. There was no English release of these, and they were on flexi disc, and you just got the little comic and listened along as you watched the comic. So that was very cool. And of course, there's the Lost in Space Viewmasters up the top there as well. So Lost in Space got a set of Viewmasters that was based on the episode The Derelict.
That's something I remember from way back in the early days. Coloured vinyl, 7-inch. I should. That's a 7-inch single. And they were flexible too, if I recall. So you could do the wobble board thing with them if you wanted to. So
so often they would put flexi discs on the covers of Beat magazine or one of those magazines, and you could listen to a new single, or usually it was an interview from Aha or something like that.
Yeah. No, I just thought the concept of having a record that's floppy and you can still actually play something of it. It was just like, oh, God, how'd they do that? All right, now, we've seen a lot of things. We've seen a lot of cards. We've seen a lot of comics and all the rest of that. Is like absolutely 3D board game, spectacular. But you are not a true Lost in Space fan until you've got this item in your collection. You wear it. This is something you got to wear, right? Forget your cosplays. Forget your, approval from the costume groups. This is the be-all and end-all costume you got to have. It is, of course, your Lost in Space helmet.
Well, you call me a capitalist dog. Remco were the absolute capitalist dogs. We have seen this. This is a Mr. Spock space helmet. We've seen it as a Star Trek helmet. We've seen it in various things. They just slap the logo of any TV series on this thing and sell it to kids. That kid, how much was he paid to be smiling like that wearing this item? I tell you what, it would have to be more than $3.99 what the item cost. That's for sure.
I reckon off camera, they're talking to him, telling him jokes or something, and he's laughing. That's really, really funny. And they get him because when he first put it on, I said, mate, I look like a complete tool wearing this.
Can you imagine, when that comic book with him in came out and his friends at school got it? They're like, Lost in Space, boy.
Oh, jeez. Hey, he got my helmet on. Jeez, he'd get picked on at school, wouldn't he? Hey, even with the helmet on, they can still recognize him. That's a bit of a shocker, I've got to say. But I'm sure, and actually, William said he still has the Blake 7 floppy record. Well done, floppy records are the go. How good is that? Laugh as you will. If this kid was given one for working on the show and he's kept it mint in box, he could sell it for a shitload more than $4. That's for sure.
For sure. They're very, very hard item to find. I do imagine, can you imagine at like one of the early Comic Cons where you've got a Lost in Space fan wearing this and the Star Trek fan wearing the Star Trek one going, Lost in Space is better. No, Star Trek's better. No, Lost in Space is better.
That is actually very, very funny. And you can imagine some people today replicating those helmets in 3D printing because they are just so bad, they're good. And some people say, I used to have one of those. You go, oh, well done.
Well, it's. I was just going to say, you said you'd have to pay a lot more than the $3.99 that's on them. Interestingly enough, there is one on eBay for $399 US. Buy it now, so about $500 for that piece of very uncool plastic.
Yeah, I would have thought it'd be a bit more than that, actually. I mean, we've seen how much bloody computer games go for from the 90s, which is unbelievable. All right, so you had all the human characters. Yeah, they're all good and wonderful, but no one gives a rat's ass for them next to the old B9 robot.
Now, I expect Russell's keyboard to actually be smoking now because he is a model maker. And I tell you what, Lost in Space was very, very well represented in model kits. I lost count of how many different model kits, especially from Japan, in all different scales that the robot was produced at. There were ones that were about as small as your little finger, and they go right up to 2 foot tall. So there was a lot of robots produced in model kit for Lost in Space. Now, I have chosen a selection of them to show at different scales, not all of them because there were just so many. And on the left there, of course, there were many different versions of the Jupiter 2 as well. So the one at the top left is actually a pewter or soft lead model one that you just attach the legs to, and there you've got the Jupiter 2, and then underneath that there's a vac formed one which is a bit bigger, and then below that again there's another model, and they are all Japanese ones that were available many years after the Lost in Space show finished.
Yeah, it's funny because by default, the Jupiter 2 is actually a pretty boring ship. It really, I mean, it's just a round UFO with a bit of extra sort of thickness to it. But otherwise, it's not like it's a spunky piece of work. So, yeah, I can understand why people go, it's groovy, but it's not as groovy as what it could have been. But hey, it was obviously suited the show, and fair enough too.
Now, there was a lot of cool vehicles in Lost in Space. The Robinsons had the space chariots, and you can see there a couple of different versions of the model kit. You could get model kits that you put together, and they were even remote control. The top one there is a remote control one. Then underneath, you could get the one with the robot that's been built up and painted, and it's underneath the Jupiter 2s. There were various versions of Jupiter 2s in different scale, and it was such a popular kit. On the top right there, you can see a Morbius kit, and that isn't the Jupiter 2, that's lighting. So if you've got a Jupiter 2, you can go and put internal and external lighting on it. And I thought they were some really nice touches. And the pictures in the middle there, you can see the different color lighting you can put in your Jupiter 2 if you want it to look particularly snazzy.
Now, you said about Rusky Babes' keyboard going completely off the deep end, right? Gavin's asked you a question, didn't know how this ship was actually made. And I think while I'm saying this, Russell's typing out this, I know exactly how they...
So I don't know how the original ship was made. I presume it was just the special effects artists put the design of the ship together. As you said, Dags, it looks so iconic. Maybe it was ripped off from an older... a show or an older movie and just modified. I have seen outtakes of special effects where, you know, they're trying to land it and get it to take off and stuff, and it just fails over and over and over again. But I don't know.
Here we go. Oh, it didn't take long, yes. There we go. You mentioned the 50 Forbidden Planet Jupiter 2 and the robot was Star Trek. And there you go. You must be sitting there going, I haven't got time for spell check. I'm just going to shove it out there because I've got to do it. Absolutely fantastic. The only being, of course, as we saw the Forbidden Planet ship, its scale doesn't actually work when you see it on the planet, but hey, at least the Jupiter 2 is thick enough. You can actually imagine people moving around inside and doing their thing. So, but you were talking about the old B9, and you are right. There's a million different varieties of the damn thing.
And the one at the top left there is the one they used in the show as well for when they were all worshipping the robot, and there was like hundreds of them around. Like Lilliput almost. But the robot is one of the most iconic robots ever, to the point where people come in and see Robbie the robot and go, it's the robot from Lost in Space. So popular and so known is he that he imprints himself on other robots. There have been many robot toys over the years. It is one of the few science fiction robots that you know every couple of years is going to come back in a different version at a different scale with more lights or more electronics. I do love the sort of the way technology evolves, where the original ones are good, But by the time you got to the 70s, they were more realistic. And then the 80s and 90s, you started getting light up ones, and then you would get the talking ones. And then the last one they released has sequence lighting, and about 12 different phrases from the show is absolutely amazing. So you can get some amazing robot toys from Lost in Space.
Yeah, and I can confirm what Aaron's saying about people coming into the store and seeing Robbie and going, "Oh, it's from Lost in Space," or asking specifically for the robot. No one asked for anything else, but yeah, we had one in the store. I don't know if it's still there or not. It wasn't a non-working one, but it looked really, really good, and it was on top of one of the shelves. And yeah, it's certainly something that got a lot of people's attention, actually, which was particularly groovy. It's kind of funny when the mechanical character is actually more popular than all the human ones, which is you got to wonder about that, but. Anyway, it's good. I mean, it was a good character, so why not? So absolutely
It is
fantastic.
interesting. I think it's because the robot and Dr. Smith were a great double act, where you have Dr. Smith as the comedy and the robot's the straight man who basically has to put up with all of Dr. Smith's antics. So that actually, by him being the straight man, it actually gives him a personality which is probably better and more memorable than the humans in the show.
Yeah, good point.
So this is the Trendmasters Lost in Space range. Now, this is when Lost in Space kind of had a renaissance in the 90s. The movie came back, and the movie brought out its own range of figures, but what sold more when they did the retro figures and re-released the retro figures, and what surprises me about this is they released all the figures. So you would not only get the robot and Dr. Smith, but you got Will and Judy and Penny, and everyone, and a couple of the monsters. So you've got the Cyclops there, and you've got the Carrot Man, and maybe the robot and Dr. Smith sold out pretty fast, but they all sold out. They were all incredibly popular. The robot by Trendmasters came out in 3 different scales, and there was a limited edition one in chrome as well, and they all sold out. It is one of those toys that in Australia it surprised me, because I guess we weren't so well known as a big sci-fi crowd. But when Lost in Space comes along, everyone seems to have seen it and known about it and likes the robot and likes Dr. Smith.
When you keep saying the Carrot Man, I thought you were just being a bit facetious, but it's actually, I have to use the magnifying glass of truth, but that dude over there is actually called the Carrot Man.
Yes.
Jeez,
It's called, the episode is called The Great Vegetable Rebellion, where the carrots and the vegetables take over, and they do turn Dr. Smith into a stick of celery.
Must have been. It's like does that sit alongside Spock's brain from Star Trek? Now, before we go any further, so Rusky Babes' keyboard is actually melting under his fingers. This time he did spend a bit of time typing this one. I've got to put it on the screen, otherwise you'll never hear the end of it. There you go, at the Jupiter miniature. So it's the wrong scale and all that. You can read all that. And yes, very, very cool. It would need TARDIS technology to fit. So well done, Mr. Rusky Babes. Awesome work. Speaking of the J2, there we go. You can check out that scale.
So this is, again, the Trendmasters Jupiter 2. So not only did they release all the figures, they released an electronic Jupiter 2 as well, and that came with the robot and Will and Dr. Smith. And we have one of these in the shop at the moment. I'm pretty sure it's $299.
Yeah, it's very, very groovy. So, yeah, a good-looking piece. And we actually took it out of the box not that long ago because someone asked to look inside, and it was, all good stuff. Very exciting.
And here's some more interesting items that you may not expect. Do you know what the top item is there, Dags?
No. I was going to say no.
So it's a Lost in Space cookie jar, and that entire thing opens up and you keep cookies inside. Now, at the feet of that cookie jar, you can see I've taken a bigger picture and put it on the bottom right. That is a salt and pepper shaker where you can, I guess the robot works, but the pepper shaker is the Jupiter 2, maybe not so much. And then the other one down the bottom there, which is a bit hard to get good pictures of, Franklin Mint did a particularly nice mini diorama with an alien landscape and the robot under sort of a dome. And I've seen that a couple of times, and it's a great piece, but it's quite hard to get.
Christy's come up with a good question. What were they hoping to achieve with the Veggie Rebellion? What was the deal with that?
By that time, I think they were pretty much writing anything goes on Lost in Space. I do know, I think it was one of those things where the writer was didn't have any ideas and thought he would put in a proposal, and they go, "Oh no, that's ridiculous," and they just said, "Yep, write the episode," and that's how it happened.
There you go, and the rest is history, eh? So there you go. I like this one from Rusky Babes. Yeah, here's Mr. to you, Mrs. Robinson. It's nothing to do with Lost in Space. Yeah, funny about that. I think it has to do with The Graduate. So very good stuff. That was one of your weaker fun factoids, Mr. Rusky Babes. But keep that keyboard working, sir. I can almost hear the keys clicking for me. Oh my god, I'm gonna get this stuff out.
So here is one of those. Well, this is like we're getting to the miscellaneous slides where I didn't quite know where to put some of this stuff. There is a Lost in Space USA astronaut costume there, which looks like Ben Cooper, who does the Halloween costumes, took Lost in Space tunic and then whacked a totally different helmet with it just to be able to say this is a space costume. It doesn't even really say Lost in Space on the box. It's just got like Marvel characters saying another great costume from yes. That's a little Doctor Who joke there. So that came out, and I could imagine being a kid at the time being quite disappointed in getting that unless you'd really, really asked for something Lost in Space. Now, on the right there is a Judy Robinson doll. And now this is interesting because it's a Japanese toy from the 60s. And as far as they know, they released others in the line, but that's the only one that's ever turned up. So there was probably, in the box, you can see there's a tube, and in the tube there was a list of the other characters, but that is the only one that has turned up. So it might have been a very low run, or people might not have bought them, or the other ones might not have gone into production, but that has to be one of the rarest Lost in Space items. For a while, you can see that there was signed cast photographs sold by a couple of different companies in America, and they had the entire cast signing them except for Guy Williams, who sadly passed away. So it isn't too hard to get a full cast signing of the Lost in Space crew apart from Guy Williams, because they obviously used it as a pension fund for years and years and years, whacking out autographs. And while I was looking for this, was it The Viral who said Penny was a childhood crush? Yep. She had a website, and you can write to her and she will send you a dedicated photo for $25, which I thought was pretty good value. Sorry, did you want to say something?
No, go for it.
And then down the bottom there is a Magic Eye game, and there's a lot of different shows and things for Magic Eye. It's like a 3D, almost like a different version of Viewmaster, but that's a Lost in Space version that they brought out for that as well.
I love the idea of having an astronaut suit for space travel, and it says Lost in Space. That's probably one thing the astronauts don't want to have happen to them.
And here's another sort of miscellaneous slide. You were saying about what the most popular character is. Well, Jonathan Harris's Dr. Smith was the only one to get a bust made of him, and you can see that at the bottom right hand corner. Now, why anyone would want a Dr. Smith bust, I'm not quite sure, but it was obviously popular enough for them to make, and it did sell out. And there was a lot of different Lost in Space items stretching back to the 60s right up to current day that you'd put in the miscellaneous kind of category. There's the lunch boxes that we've looked at before. Interestingly, with Lost in Space, there was the original 60s one, and then there was a reproduction of the 60s one. And then quite recently, there was a whole different metal lunch box made for Lost in Space as well. So it's had a lunchbox around for decades. I find one of the most interesting things on the top right, there's the giant Pez robot from Lost in Space. Now, I don't know if anyone would have got one of these and used it. I haven't seen that around. I did find that a bit of, oh, did we really need that? Johnny Lightning did a series of Lost in Space miniature cars, and they did 4 of them. They're not really cars. There's the space chariot and the space pod, the Jupiter 2, and the robot. The robot has been used outside of Lost in Space in a lot of advertising. I couldn't find it, but he was used, I think, in a Holden ad here in the 90s. With the rest of the family. Down the bottom there, he's saying Danger Will Robinson because he's holding a can of breath mints, which is the strongest breath mints you can get. And they use the robot to advertise the breath mints. Up the top, you've, of course, got your licensed Lost in Space Danger Will Robinson number plates. and then there's a calendar on the top left, which came with a robot standee. So Lost in Space has been around for a long time, and a lot of different merchandisers have used the license to sell their product.
You had one of these lunch boxes in the store. Did you have the original or the reissue?
That one is the reissue. So the one in the middle that kind of looks like a, well, I guess the older style of lunchbox is the original, but I've only ever had the reissue. I've never seen an original one in Australia.
And Ange had a question about, I can't remember who you were talking about, which actress it was.
That would be Angela Cartwright was Penny, was it?
I think so. Yeah, I can't remember which is which, but is she on OnlyFans? I don't know what that is.
I don't know if she's on OnlyFans. I did know it was fun. It was like you can buy an autograph for $25 on I think it was on a comic with postage, and if you wanted Billy Mooney to sign it as well, it was another $20. So you could still get both of them currently to sign comics and dedicate them for you.
Very good. Now it's just about to hit 10 o'clock. We've only got like 3 slides left, so we might as well stick it out for us kids. Don't run away just yet.
Now, these are Metropolis Toys 12-inch Lost in Space figures. They're not quite the detail of Hot Toys, but they're still pretty good figures. They're a lot better than the average action figure you'd get in the shops for, your $50 price point. These are about $300. I do think when they're in the diorama, like they are at the bottom, they look a lot better than when they're just sitting in the shelf by themselves. So obviously is one of those things where the lighting and the posing and the diorama really does make the figure. They still bring out 1 or 2 new ones of these a year, and they have for about the past decade. So Lost in Space is still popular enough for them to be releasing this collectible merchandise, and there is a big enough fan base that it sells out pretty quick, and then they go for more on the internet on the secondary market.
It's funny, isn't it? Because it's such an old show that you would think there'd be no audience for it, except for old farts like ourselves. But if a younger audience is dialing into it, you do wonder what the appeal. It's a real be an interesting psychological test to say, does a young audience really dial into the show or not? And if they do, why do they do that? So yeah, it's an interesting point. Also with the figures, if they did a version where they're in black and white, just shades of grey instead of colour, be curious to see how they would look too. So first season versions, cool.
And these are some of the other figures that are available. And again, you can see when they're out and they're posed, they do look a lot better than when they're in the boxes. Interestingly enough, they did the family, and then the first one they did outside the family was the Keeper, who is Michael Rennie from Day the Earth Stood Still. There is some sci-fi pedigree in Lost in Space, and they've got to the point where they are reissuing some of the original figures better. So behind the Rip It Off the Card logo, you've got John Robinson with his jetpack and in a different costume. Down the bottom, of course, you've got Judy and Penny, and the bloop, which I'm sure if you're a Lost in Space fan is an essential item to have. The bloop was, of course, Penny's pet monkey with big ears, a Vulcan monkey.
Yes, it's highly illogical. What can I say? Did you say Michael Rennie or David Rennie?
Did I it's Michael Rennie. I thought I said Michael. I might not have.
That's right. You might have. I realised afterwards I heard the Rennie part, but I didn't hear the rest of it. So yeah, very, very cool. There's actually, believe it or not, on the Nine News, there's a reporter in Queensland called Michael Rennie. It's like every time I see him, I just want to say, "Hey, Clartu, how you going, old son?" But yeah, these look really good actually, and well done to them too. But yes, you are right. A monkey with pointed ears. Yes, everyone needs one of those.
And then, of course, you've got the home video formats. Now, the most interesting one there is the pilot episode, which, like a lot of shows, Lost in Space got a pilot and then they went and refilmed it to make the actual episode and added bits in and took bits out and then used a lot of the stuff that was in the pilot in other episodes. Now, that cover is quite interesting because it's a total deception to anyone who buys it and watches it, because the pilot did not have the robot or Dr. Smith in. So if you bought that and watched the pilot and you were waiting for them to turn up, they don't turn up, but yet they're on the cover. So it is one of those things where you wouldn't get away with it now. Lost in Space has been released on home video format many, many times. There's a selection of releases there. I bought all of them when they came out on VHS because I love Lost in Space. And then I bought them again on DVD. I haven't got round to buying them on Blu-ray. The US editions, of course, had different colors and covers, and they're in different format from the ones we had here. And Lost in Space did that thing that really cheeses me off, where they released the whole series 2 episodes at a time, And then for a money grab to get everyone to buy them again, they released the deluxe editions with 3 episodes a tape on. But I didn't buy them again. I just stuck with the originals and then the DVDs. I haven't watched Lost in Space for a while. Sometimes I put it on in the shop. It's a very nostalgic show for me because it's one, like Doctor Who, that I don't really remember a time where I didn't know about Lost in Space or, always was watching it. So having the ability to now watch it on DVD and anytime I want is good. And I do watch it sometimes and have it on in the shop.
Like a lot of things, you just got to be in the mood for it. Christy actually said she saw some of the vids at the shop recently. Are they worth picking up? The answer to that is just purely if you're interested or not. If you're not interested, then don't bother. There's no value in them. It's just purely if it's something that works for you. So, yes, entirely your choice, I would suggest. Where are we? As probably you guess, Rusky Babes has said that the blue was a pain to work with because, obviously working with children and animals, as I say in the classics, is never a good thing. Pilot used music for The Day the Earth Stood Still instead of more familiar Johnny Williams music. That would make sense. So, yes, very cool. And there was a comment here I really wanted to pick up on because I thought this is something I didn't expect to see. Something for us to think about. We're on the subject of the 60s. Any chance of a Twilight Zone Outer Limits collectible show? Ooh, it'd be limited amount to pick from that one.
I would absolutely do that. I don't know if we'd probably have to join them together to get enough merchandise out of the 2 series, but I love both of those series and I could talk about those for an hour for sure.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Very, very good. All right. Well, that actually brings us to the end of the episode. It's actually timed it quite nicely. So, so Lost in Space, despite its really, really old, like 50-plus year history, has still got a bit of life in the old girl yet, so to speak. And the remake series from Netflix has certainly helped popularize it a little bit more. And the collectibles, as you said, are still got some value associated with them too, which is particularly groovy. Yeah. What do you reckon there, Mr. Aaron?
Well, I think it's one of those shows that I'm happy we've been able to highlight. Thanks everyone for for hanging around with us tonight and having a talk about Lost in Space. I hope everybody has seen something that they remember from their childhood, or maybe will check out Lost in Space in the future if they've never seen it.
Yeah, which I think is probably wouldn't be many people, except for me, because I couldn't stand friggin' Smith. He was a nuisance, but it had the reverse effect on me as it did for other people. Huh?
The pain.
Yes, that's exactly what it was too. So there we go. All right, guys, we're going to leave you to it. You party hard and rock on. We'll see you all next week. And as always, make sure you keep your Lost in Space collectibles mint in box.
Or rip them out of the card.
Don't do that. Okay, see you guys. Have fun.
Have a good night, guys.
Bye.